this is why this conversation is so special and while we're watching it. If this was like anybody else, I probably wouldn't be watching this, because we've had like variations of this conversation before on this channel. Having people from Ukraine speak on these streams and be there to give their opinion on these hot button topics that are talked about so much in the press, so valuable. But no, we're back to this again. Oh God. Straight in debate. I think it's accurate to call it a debate. Anna disagreed with Vaush. She presented why she disagreed with what Vaush said. Well, multiple things Vaush said. Vaush pushed back, and they went back and forth for like half an hour or something. That's a debate. Like, you can, I mean, what should we call it? A polite disagreement. It was a polite disagreement of the people. Like, the people had opinions, and they decided they would disagree. Like, just call it a debate. Like, what do you want me to call this? They had a disagreement, and they argued about it. Or had a polite disagree, like what am I supposed to call it? A spirited discussion with Anna and Vaush. Like, fuck me. I was supposed to say fuck. No, fuck you. I'm gonna call it a debate. Dylan has too many gutter spies. True, I do. Too many gutter spies in fight chat. You can tell because they have white names. An educated duel, a master intellectual discussion. Do you understand the original context of Vaush's cause for Azov's suicide? Here is when he said it when Azov was being extremely Islamophobic. Yeah, I know the context when he was saying it, because this was in reaction to, and people are bringing it up right now, and I don't think this is really, I mean, it matters for why he was so angry, but so the Ukrainian government account basically tweeted out like a video of some Azov fighters covering bullets with lard, you know, pig's fat. And the idea was, right? The idea was when they did this, that they were going to shoot the Kadyrov boys, you know, Kadyrov's Chechen fighters who are Muslim, and because, you know, it's covered in pig's fat, you know, it's religious disgrace, and you're insulting their faith while also engaging in combat, which I think is gross. I think most people agree with me that that's gross. And this was the context where Vaush said that you know, all Azov people should fucking die, like that he hopes they all die when fighting the Russians. He hopes everybody in Azov just kind of like dies out and all gets killed in battle. Basically what he said. I think he said it a little bit more aggressive way, but that's basically what he said. And that's what we're going to see the disagreement over, because I remember being in person with Anna in Ukraine, in Kharkiv, in her apartment, and going back and forth with her about a bunch of topics. And then Vaush came up and she said to me that she wanted to bring this to his attention. So I know that she's cared about this for a while and wanted to bring this to his attention for a very long time, because it's been literally months since that's happened. I was in Ukraine at the time, going back in a month, but I don't know, it was like 3-4 months ago or something at this point. So she's had some time to stir on this. So that's why I'm so interested in this conversation, is because I know she wanted to confront him on it, and I'm hoping that both of these people will engage in good faith. Dylan, he said them dying fighting other fascists would be a win-win, basically. You know what? Let's just go straight into debate, not debate exactly what he said. We'll just see the back and forth about the conversation. We'll see what Vaush, like, kind of, because Anna's gonna say what he said, and then Vaush can push back or not push back, because, you know, he's his own man, and I will not hold his you know, towel. I think he can defend himself like a grown man. So let's watch the debate. I'm very interested to see this. Oh, I need like an intro for the YouTube people. You know what? Fuck that. They'll have to deal with this slutty intro where it's a mess. Let's watch this.
Yep.
A couple of people in chat have been screaming at me that you're going to epically own me in a debate. And I've been getting ready this entire time with all of my bad faith rhetorical tactics. But I have forgotten what it is we're debating about. Would you mind reminding me?
Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't call it a debate. you people are literally obsessed with the debate stuff. I'm like, would like to call it a conversation.
It was a debate. I mean, you can say it was a conversation. I've watched a little bit of it. It turns into a debate. I mean, I don't know. You can call it what I want. I don't care. It's fine. I know that people, when you say debate, it sounds like you've taken this hard position, you've taken this hard position, and they must clash. But I mean, the way we use debate on the internet and the way Vaush has used debate and everybody else debate, it was a debate. Doesn't really matter.
Where I express my, let's put it like,
not the D word. Exactly. You can't say it. You can't say it. It's a dirty word. If you admit to ever doing the debate, dirty. It's dirty.
that concerns with some things you said. And I would like you and your audience to hear my concerns and to think about it a bit. That's what I want.
Sure.
So,
Hit me up.
Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, basically, I would like to point out first and foremost that I really appreciate your coverage of Ukraine, and I pretty much agree with, from what I've seen, with like 95% of stuff you say, if not more. So it's not like a, you know, some huge ass thing. But what happened is basically I heard your comments about Azov, and in a video, and also people send me your tweets about them, which I should have pulled up probably, but I will quote, like, not directly, but, you know, your words that you said. And I, when I heard it, it was, I think, in maybe April. I'm not sure. My life is a bit, you know, weird. I don't remember dates when I heard people saying stuff.
That's
but
reasonable.
You were covering basically what was going on, and I was watching your video. This is how I.
So to be clear, oh, accidentally turned on the lo-fi again. To be clear, what he was responding to was a video posted by a Ukrainian government account of Azov soldiers dipping bullets in pig's fat to shoot Chechen fighters, Kadyrov's boys, because they're Muslim, and that pisses, you know, that disgraces their religion. Just for the context of what Vaush was originally reacting to.
Stumbled basically upon you and realized you're the last good lefty on YouTube, basically. But the last hope of the Western leftists. But other than that, this phrase, I will admit, did hurt quite a bit, especially because I respect you a lot, and you're not like a tanky, you know, dude that calls me a Nazi whore and everything with Ukraine is Nazi. So these people,
dude, some of the hate that Anna's gotten has been actually absolutely insane. I've seen people like call for her and her family to be killed in drone strikes and just absolutely horrific stuff. It really is crazy how much I will see certain groups of people, particularly Marxist-Leninists who support the Russian invasion. But it isn't just them, of course. It's, you know, it's hardcore Russian nationalists. Some of these people who are like hardcore, like religious theocratic types and believe Russia is like the future of the Christian world, you know, how much they'll like feign concern for like the people of Ukraine when it comes to like, oh, the violence is so terrible. Oh, it's so bad. And then they'll hear like a single Ukrainian who disagrees with them. It's like, I hope everything and everyone you ever are attached to burns to the ground. It's really, really psychotic.
I don't care about. I don't want to talk about them. Fuck them. But you saying what you said is it was a bit rough. And what you said was basically that Azov guys should pretty much put guns in their mouths and like kill themselves, and you would be like happy about it, basically. Not a direct quote, but the gist of it, you know? Also, people showed me your tweets when you said like, be careful guys to post locations of Ukrainian troops, not to like dox their location to the enemy unless they're Azov.
I don't remember when he said this. I will assume he was saying this in a joking manner. I will assume that, because if he was being serious, that's very stupid. For any number of reasons. Not only because it will get Ukrainian soldiers killed, but not only get them killed, but it could possibly get other units working in tandem with them. So even if your intention was to kill Azov, it would end up killing other people, could end up killing the aid workers in the area. or who are delivering aid. It could hurt a lot of people, kill journalists. It's just not a good idea to give that information to the Russians or help the Russian war effort in any way. Anyway, what were we saying? Yeah, sorry.
This one?
Sorry, that comment, I just got a comment in chat and it threw me off. You are such a stupid inbred liberal. Long live communism. Fuck you and your neo-Nazi sympathizing politics. Wow. No, I had, support for Ukraine, but you've convinced me. Made a very convincing argument. And
Burns is
I have changed my opinion.
Morally corrupt.
Long live Novorossiya.
And the comments that people wrote to that were even worse than what you said. But I will not hold you accountable for the stuff that people in the comments says. I will talk to you about what you said. So I will probably share a story first. I know facts and stuff are important, but here's a little bit of a story. So you wished pretty much to the entirety of Azov battalion to, die. And you said you would be happy if they die. And people in your comments said a lot of stuff like, yeah, put them to the meat grinder, stuff like that. And me and quite a lot of Ukrainians were highly offended by that shit.
Yeah.
And I will try to explain why in the best way I can. So to answer me this, for starters, are you of the opinion that literally most people or every person in Azov is a Nazi? Is this your opinion?
An important question. Let's see how Vaush responds. I'm reserving most of my opinions until I think we get to a good stopping point. I can ramble once they've had a good back and forth.
No, not every. I mean, nobody has exact numbers. It's the Azov Battalion was like a regional defense group that emerged kind of their own volition during a period of time where Ukraine had essentially no military capabilities, and they ended up getting.
And this is the thing. Azov is very big. Well, maybe not as much since the splintering with Kraken, but is from in large part the Kharkiv area, and that's where Anna grew up. And when the Russians were trying to set up a Kharkiv kind of autonomous zone like they have with the Donbass and Luhansk and Donetsk, when that was being set up, Azov was one of the few organizations that went in there and fought them and stopped them from doing that. And knowing the torture and the killings that followed the establishing of a similar situation, a similar government weird puppet style whatever that Russia's setting up in Luhansk and Donetsk. After seeing that terror, a lot of locals around Kharkiv, same with Mariupol, have very fond feelings for the fact that they risked themselves for the last 8 years in some capacity. Well, not for the last 8 years. They've been moved around away from frontline duty due to missile courts, yada yada. But because of that, a lot of people hold sympathies for them for the long term, despite no matter completely separate from their political views. And recently, due to the fight and Azovstal and Mariupol, Azov has become gigantic. But for Anna, I would think particularly because of her regional upbringing, Kharkiv, she would probably, as she is saying, know a lot of people who have some association or are part of Azov personally. And so that's what makes this such an interesting conversation, is because I feel like a lot of time when we talk about foreign policy, especially wars and conflicts and deadly struggles where people die, and it's very personal and human for people on the ground, we very, very rarely actually have the people who are directly affected by these buzzwords that get brought up while talking about these foreign policy conflicts, like Azov, which is a buzzword, should not get as much attention as it does. How small they are, but it gets the attention. Focus on this particularly. One second, I lost myself. See, this is where the coffee needs. Lost myself. Oh, but generally, basically, it means a lot to her. And we don't get a lot of conversations about foreign policy, especially in this space where we're so disconnected from the more educational on the ground reporting or educational kind of academic stuff. We don't have a lot of conversations where the people directly affected and part of these groups get to participate in these back and forth. So it's really cool to have Anna in the space doing this. It's really cool to see this conversation go back and forth, especially considering what region of Ukraine she's from.
getting
Yes.
involved in the fighting in the Donbass pretty quickly against the Russian proxy invasion.
My sound is
And
cutting
the-
out. How bad is it really? My sound cutting out. My sound is cutting off and on. That's not good. I wonder why that is. Is it? No, it's fine. Okay. Well, stopped. Good. If it starts again, tell me. I might have to stop and fix it.
A lot of the Azov group people were like ban the right ultra nationalists. There were a lot of far right people there, but because it was also like a regional defense thing, a lot of people get pulled in on that. I don't know the exact numbers on this, and every time you check, somebody has like a different like estimation of like, okay, well, there were 1,000 Azov people and 500 are Nazis, or actually 10,000 Azov, but only.
If you want, do you want to know what my estimation is for what percentage of Azov is Nazis? Absolutely lower than, I would say, 10%. Most certainly low, 10%. I mean, the estimations before, like, that were given by, like, I think their founder at one point was 10 to 20%. Kind of a large range to go from, but I know it's most certainly smaller than that. I would think it's like 5% or lower, but that's Nazis, and I'm talking like straight out like Nazis. I would say is a very small part of the organization now. But I do think that nationalists, right-wing nationalists, are still influential in the group. Are they majority? I guess it depends on what you mean by like right-wing nationalists. Are we talking like the hardcore, like I hate the gays? I would say that they make up probably a larger percentage. I mean, maybe you're talking like 30%, 40%. I don't know. But there's like the actual Nazis, which are I would say a very small minority part of the group. And then maybe like when we're talking about like the more like right-wing nationalist type of like, like kind of highly revering Stefan Bandera and highly that more wing, like right-wing wing of Ukrainian politics. I would say maybe I'm just throwing around numbers here, but from my personal experience, that's what I would say.
Only 1,000 Nazis, I don't know the exact bits. I know that they definitely have a pretty strong, like, average ideological.
Mike is, god damn it. Okay, well, fuck me. We're gonna have to find a way to fix this. If we keep getting reports of mic issues, then we gotta fix it. Audio input capture, filters. This help or hurt? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, this should help. I think. Yes, this should help. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Better now? Hope so. Okay, now let's be done.
Disposition, though.
Correct on everything. I will just add a little bit, details, I guess. So basically, what happened?
Yahoo got a tier 1 subscription. Dicks. Wide.
Wow. Very happy. Very happy we had that contribution. I think we all feel more intellectually enriched. Thank you, Matt.
Is, as you probably know, Maidan Revolution happened. And after that, we had no government, functional government. There was no election, nothing yet done. So it was a clusterfuck, basically. After the huge revolution, we had no government. Our president escaped, obviously, to Russia, former President Yanukovych. And it was a pretty dire time. And in this exact time, of course, Russia decided to invade, which is obviously the most hard time in the history of modern Ukraine. They attacked and they annexed Crimea, and then they invaded further. So Donbass, the drill. And we at the time had huge problem with traders, with pro-Russian people in very strong positions of power, like judges, institutions, army personnel, stuff like that. They were infiltrated pretty much everything because before Maidan, they controlled pretty much everything.
To be completely honest, they still had even going into this war, they still had significant influence. Say post this war, in the government at least, it's basically not.
Not always directly, but many Russian citizens were even, in control of pretty important institutions in Ukraine. So this was a clusterfuck, and we couldn't literally trust anyone, and we had no functional army, but we had an invasion on our hands. So in the plans were not only Donbass, but also Kharkiv, where I'm from. also Odessa, and other places. So basically, the people who ended up being the only defenders of this country were those volunteer battalions. Not only Azov, many other as well, like Aidar, many other. And they were, as you said, primarily far-right people. Some of them were very us people, suspicious guys. So, like ultras, so like football fans. They were like maybe like some kind of like gym culture, alpha male dudes as well. There's a lot of people there, honestly. And reasonably, the main person who created Azov, Beletsky, was a literal Nazi. So there's like no way around that shit. So he was like,
dude's really weird too. Like this idea of like a crusade of like the white race. It's really weird. You can go look into him on your own, but the dude's just a white supremacist. He's a really weird white supremacist. He's a failed, like, what is a failed white supremacist? But like politically, he's failed because since he split off from Azov early on, he made his own political party, and they have failed to garner a single seat. And Rada, which is the Ukrainian House of Representatives, I think it's called the National Court. Yeah, it's the National Courts. No influence whatsoever when it comes to actual power. So I think a lot of times, like, Azov gets brought up to show, like, Ukraine's a Nazi state, but when you like look at Ukrainians who had an option to vote for the guy who founded Azov and is like, here's the Nazi values and let's bring it to government, the heroes of Azov, like, he doesn't get support, he doesn't get votes. Quite frankly, a political failure. But the reason why he keeps getting brought up is because he founded Azov. The only thing he made, which is now actually successful, and as it split off further and further from him, and has continued to get more and more disconnected from where originally he put it 8 years ago when it was founded with all these football hooligans and ultras, that break has grown more and more and more. And the further it has gone away from him, the more successful Azov has gotten, because Nazism fucking sucks.
Basically Jews everywhere, like they control the banking, crypto Jews, the dance. Yeah, so basically all of that shit. White race, which was a cringe and a half in Ukraine because nobody literally talks about race here. We're like very homogenous, there's yeah, obviously there are people here who are not white, but the majority of people are white, and it's not like a big conversation. People talk about ethnicity, people talk about nationality for sure, but race, it was like a topic that people like didn't even like pick up. And basically he was that. So yeah, so he is the one who created Azov, which is true. And he was a Nazi, but then he kind of fell in love with Israel, which I don't know what the fuck is that about.
It was like Israel and I think it was Japan. No, Israel and Japan are like these nations that are very homogenous, or is like aiming towards homogeneity in government and its policy when it has to do with immigration and stuff like that, and therefore he envies them. That doesn't mean he has positive views of the Jews, but he has a positive view of the homogeneity that Israel tries to implement through its government when it comes to religion and whatever. You can all do your research on your own. Same with Japan, I think, is more famous when it comes to the white nationalist circles, and it brought up more because it's not Jews. And but when it comes to actual like Jewish people, I don't think he probably has a very favorable view of them, but Israel, because of that homogeneity, he thumbs up too. Damn, it's still cutting out. Well, fuck me, sorry.
He kind of realized that his
I keep changing the settings. I don't know what else I'm supposed to fucking do now. God, I don't know what to do. 1, 2, 3. Is it that I get too loud, or what is it? What is it? What is it that's doing this? Maybe I put it in. The vid is bad? What do you mean the vid is bad? The video is bad. It's not me, or is it the mic? What do you mean the vid is bad? Is it the mic or is it me? The mic or software seems to cut out sometimes when your volume jumps down, like turning off at the end of a sentence. Oh, I know what it is then. Jesus Christ, I know what it is. The open threshold is not. 1, 2. There we go. Now it should be fine.
Perfect ethno state all alone was the Jewish one. And he then started to use this, by the way, to explain he's not anti-Semitic, because he's like, well, I love Israel. And I was like, what? It's like, forget Beletsky. Basically, he created Azov, and he's a Nazi, yeah. But afterwards, then many people who were also in that battalion, like Yemichev, for example, who is from Kharkiv, by the way, like most of them are, by the way, they are from Kharkiv or Donbass. They are not Westerners, as many Russians tell you. Bandera.
Most Azov fighters probably speak Russian, which I think is kind of bizarre for a lot of Westerners, knowing how the, you know, divide in the war has been kind of like drawn on this like Ukrainian speaking versus Russian speaking. But, you know, Ukrainian you know, culture and history and language is too complicated for that. Definitely when it comes to the politics. Some of the most diehard anti-Russian people I know when it comes to the Russian government are Russian speakers. But it shouldn't be that surprising. Some of the most anti-British people I know are people who speak English in Ireland or the United States.
You know, Western people, they're actually Russian-speaking Easterners, primarily. Kharkiv, Donbass. So, as you can imagine, they would be the ones to want to defend their Donbass, where they're from, obviously, right? So it's not only they're like very aggressive people, but they also
morally corrupt.
It's their home that is invaded.
Thanks, JJS.
Like, entire east, pretty much, right? So most of them then they had some quarrels, basically amongst each other. Some were trying to ditch Beletsky because of his idiotic anti-Semitic rhetoric, and that people.
So Anna's just going through the history, so we're just going to keep letting her go through it, and before we get into the back and forth, that's when I'm going to get wordy, and that's when I'm going to get opinionated. Somebody in chat said, so is Vaush bad here? Let's wait until we get to the back and forth, but I do think Vaush, I think Vaush should have just issued like a correction in this back and forth, which I think is kind of, you know what, we'll just wait. You know what? Just wait. We'll get to it.
Did not support. It's really hard to sell Nazism in Ukraine. Really hard, because people like basically like hell bent on hating it because it done so much damage. You know. So, for example, in America, you didn't have like a Nazi annihilating you, right?
Man.
So, but in Ukraine, so many people died, like millions of people died, and Soviet Union, of course, years of Soviet Union were primarily concentrated on hating like Nazism and on saying how great we are because we defeated Nazism, right? So it's pretty hard to sell Nazism in Ukraine in that term. But he didn't manage to do that. He was very interested in politics, not in...
Yeah, he was very interested in politics, and he was a massive failure when it comes to politics. Yeah, I mean, to be completely honest, if it wasn't for the Azov battalion, we wouldn't be talking about him.
Fighting, he created his own national corps. Not corpse, whatever. Not the dead bodies. National something corpse, I think, but I can pronounce the word correctly.
Yep.
For make it not sounding like dead bodies.
It's core.
So basically, oh, maybe yeah.
You ignore the P and the S and just call it core.
Yeah, so basically that's what he created. It was deeply unpopular among people, among even far-right people in Ukraine.
True.
Nobody like vibed with that shit. But
yeah, I mean, like if you were super far-right in Ukraine at that point, what was your like, I mean, we're talking like 2014, I guess Svoboda was like the big one, right? But they have more power and like influence around like Lviv, where like, I mean, Azov has a lot of like, I guess like aesthetic value, but they don't have like much political weight. They have more political weight out east, but like there were other options that the far right politically went to because there were more people with, you know, people with political experience, yada yada. There's a whole list of reasons why the political project of Azov failed miserably. Maybe I could do a video about that, but all you need to know is that Azov as a political project, when it comes to the original like Nazi kind of leader of Azov, completely failed.
Basically, he didn't get any seat. He get one seat in our Verkhovna Rada, which is like parliament in Ukraine. He got one seat first time and 0 seats the next elections. So not very lucky in terms, you know, getting power. So other than that, what I was saying is that people started to defend their country and fight to prevent Russia from going any further. So pretty much the only reason why my Kharkiv and me as a person were not occupied by Russia in 2014 is them.
This is what I was talking about earlier. That personal, this is why this conversation is so special and why we're watching it. If this was like anybody else, I probably wouldn't be watching this, because we've had like variations of this conversation before on this channel. The reason why is that personal experience and that emotion and genuineness that is expressed in conversation that is often left out due to the lack of participation of, you know, people from the wars, people directly affected by the wars that are often discussed, like in Syria, Iraq, etc. So that's why, again, I already said it earlier, but last time I'll emphasize it, having people from Ukraine speak on these streams and be there to give their opinion on these hot button topics that are talked about so much in the press, so valuable.
So despite everything, I will be forever grateful for that, for obvious reason, because I don't want to be killed, raped, and imprisoned. So yeah, and I want to be a Ukrainian, as many other people want to be, you know? So afterwards, they were kind of like integrated in the army as a whole. So not like as volunteer entities, like separate battalions, right? But integrated in Ukrainian armed forces, which was a good thing, because literally they started to blend in with everyone else and get de-radicalized. They separated themselves from Beletsky and his political party entirely, almost entirely, and they started to get way more new members, just people who wanted to protect their home. And the only
So this is true. What she is saying is true. Now, the variations of extent of how much Azov has changed, I mean, it depends. I think Azov, since the war started, that change process has been sped up and like put into overdrive, not only because, you know, there's a big spotlight on Ukraine and like Ukraine doesn't want any of this type of stuff, since it's weaponized so much by the Russians, to be very visible, and they want to clean it up. There is, you know, as Azov enters the public consciousness, is kind of like the hero army, you know, the heroes of you know, Mariupol. A lot of people are starting to see it more as just like an elite group of fighters. This is what's communicated to me by Ukrainians, less than like a political group, like, oh, they're politically this or they're politically that. Again, the political Azov, a political project originally that Azov was kind of like being connected to from its original founder, failed. So it feels like from that original like white nationalist Heil type of like Azov that the original founder like set out, that failed. But the fighters and what it evolved to be now has become a behemoth when it comes to like cultural weight that Azov has. Anywhere you go, and in any major city, you're going to see Azov symbology. You're going to see it whether it's on walls and graffiti. You're going to see it on shirts. You're going to see it somewhere. Even if you're not seeing the fighters in the area, because of Mariupol, because of the stand of Azovstal, they have so much weight now, like unbelievable cultural weight. You could see them everywhere. And because of that cultural weight, a lot of people have been made aware of them and went to join them because of that Azovstal, Mariupol, we are the band of elite fighters mentality, less than like, I am here because I believe in the like Aryan, right? Like that's being lessened and lessened and lessened as they become more normie pilled, as I say we could get, you know, we could say, as they become more mainstream, quote unquote. Which I think is a good thing, that they're becoming more normie pilled. Some people will exaggerate it more than it has, you know, how more normie pilled than they actually are, but they have become more normie pilled. That is absolutely true.
Only people who were fighting back in the day were these battalions. So if you wanted to protect your country, that's where you had to go. You didn't have like, you know, a regular army, which is weird for Americans to understand, I think, but we had like zero army, and these guys were the ones who started to get more people there, like from various ethnicities, so like Jewish people, Greeks, Azerbaijani people, all sorts of people started to integrate and to become part of this, you know, force in Azov as well. And of course, this helped with, you know, dilute this nationalist, very far right vibe they were having. And yeah, so this is basically what happened. And at this time, pretty much Nemechev denounced, he's like the actual leader of Azov right now. He denounces like what Beletsky did. He also denounced his far right and anti-Semitic stuff. And he said that they have like a 30% of very, very far right people in Azov right now, which is his estimation. There's very much, like you said, you cannot check that shit, honestly. So how would you say, yeah, 30%, yeah. But that's what he says. And also we cannot jump in his head to see, are you a Nazi? But at least
look, I don't want to get into percentages, but I would say that the vast majority of Azov fighters are not Nazis, and I would say the majority of them are not like the far right ultra Stefan Bandera nationalists, of like the UPA style, or like the people who like cover themselves all in the cloak of like, I believe, and what was that one Ukrainian author? I forget his name. Denton or something along those lines. I forget, not Denton. I think it was Denton. I forget the exact name, but I would say that like the actual far right ultra national, I would say maybe like a much larger percentage, but still maybe I would say now not a majority. It's just been milquetoastified more and more and more. Hopefully it continues, but there's still far right influence in Azov, but they're not just like a bunch of Zig Heiling neo-Nazis. That would be, a nuanced way to view it.
his rhetoric has nothing to do with that. And not a single like manifesto of theirs has anything to do with anti-Semitism or any racial shit at all. Mostly they talk about anti-imperialism, so fight against Russia, and they are very NATO skeptic and very Eurosceptic. So they don't want to be part of European Union and part of NATO. They want like independent Ukraine, and they hate like communism, Soviet Union shit, and Russia. That's like the main gist. And again, not to say that there are no Nazis there, for sure. But, the majority of them right now are not Nazis. So, here's my problem. Why did you think it's okay to wish those people dead?
Here we go.
Oh, sure. Well, I don't and can't really care if Nazis die, because the political consequences of them living are generally far worse than, them not making it along the way. The main concern that I have, and this has been lightened somewhat recently because Ukraine actually has a pretty resilient liberal democracy, which means that it's sturdy politically. But the concern that I have is that what you call watering down, I would call like integration and normalization. That by having people in the Azov battalion washed into the mainstream military, they get quieter, they get less overtly anti-Semitic because that stuff doesn't sell, but they still quietly tried to build power within those institutions. That is, after all, what happened in Germany after the fall of the Third Reich. And it's what's happening right now in America, where they stay, more quiet, and they go like, okay, we have some legitimacy now. We can gain accreditation as heroes of Ukraine. We have sacrificed ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what he's saying, but I mean, like, there's no political route for like Azov as a political project. I mean, there's a possibility that those who have fought in Azov through their like hero status could maybe run for office and then garner influence, or something along those lines. I could see that, but I don't think there's any real possibility of like a large scale like Azov plot like down the line ever like uprooting Ukrainian government and taking over, anything like that. I understand his concern, this idea that, hey, look, these people who are far right within Azov could become like super heroes and, like I just said, be commemorated and brought to a higher level. I think that is a valid concern, but saying that is very different than I hope everybody in Azov dies.
Burns is
right?
an immoral.
Saying that you have a concern that in the celebration of Ukrainian resilience of Mariupol and Azovstal and stuff like that, some people who are maybe not the best cats might get pushed to a position of prominence because on a higher rate than average, you are more far right people in Azov than, say, I don't know, the Zaporozhye Territorial Defense Forces or whatever, any other group. Probably the worst, like another group, another military organization, another whatever. I think that's fine to say. I think that's a good thing to say, in fact, but that's very different than all the Azov fighters should die. That is a very far cry from it, and I don't know if it's a walk back, but we'll see. We'll let it continue, but it's very different. Gilendar Dekant, thank you so much for the tier 1.
We've laid our blood and sweat on the line to defend it against Russian invasion. And now we have some legitimate institutional power. So we have to keep quiet for a bit. But one day, we'll take back what's ours. And this happens all the time with far-right ultranationalist groups. Now, whether or not that's actually going to play out, like, obviously, I don't know. And at the moment, I don't think it will. In particular, I don't think that Euro and NATO skeptic vibes in Ukraine are going to survive the war with Russia. I think that the, pro-EU, pro-NATO sentiment is just too strong. I think that Ukraine has a bright future ahead of it. And I don't think any effort to subvert that with some kind of weird isolatory ultranationalism would work. But I do think efforts are being made. There are a lot of photos of Ukrainian soldiers who have like weird Nazi memorabilia patches on their shoulders and stuff. And a lot of Western leftists, they see this and they misinterpret it. They think, oh, look at this, they're all Nazis. That's not true. In reality, it's a small group of Nazis in the military making an effort to be in front of every camera shot because they want to front themselves.
No, I don't think that's it. I mean, that could be it. I have no way to disprove it or prove it. Obviously, I can't read the intent of people in photos. But from my experience, when I found a Ukrainian neo-Nazi, because I have found one when I was, I found one that I know for sure is, and other people that are like, I don't know for sure because I don't know those exact runes, yada yada. He did not have a high effort to be on camera. And like go in front of it, at least in my experience. I think a lot of it might be that the areas that were covered the most, say like Mariupol, had Azov participating, which has, of course, the NI, as they say, the national identity, but it, Wolf's Angle, yada yada. Those symbols that are very obviously connected to Nazism and like the far right kind of paganistic, like weird shit. And that being in the areas, those symbols are, and those units are fighting on the front lines constantly, definitely in areas like Mariupol, which got a ton of press attention. And so on average, I think those groups are just getting more camera time. Not to mention, and I think this is the bigger thing, I think it's confirmation bias. I think when people see a swastika, obviously you're gonna fucking stop and look. So you're not gonna look at the 99 Ukrainian soldiers who didn't have a swastika. You're gonna the soldier who does have a swastika. And considering how many fakes are made of like Ukrainian soldiers, like having swastikas here, swastikas there. For example, the fake SS symbol that people tried to pretend was on the flag that Zelensky gave to Congress that was, disproven as nothing but falsehoods. People have to like construct more to get it out there. So I think it's mostly confirmation bias combined with the regionality of where a lot of the fighting is going on, being in parts of the country where Azov has a lot of influence.
It's the same reason why a lot of U.S. Military officials over in Iraq and Afghanistan were very keen on promoting like Western Christianity in the photo ops that they would do over there, because they want to overemphasize the presence they have in the in the occupation. They want to overemphasize their involvement. In truth, like, edgy statements aside, if you're like a Nazi in the Azov battalion, like a proper Nazi, I mean, like ideologically, I think the best thing that you can do is, obviously the best thing, like the best thing you could do is fight, win, and be de-radicalized. I'm big on that narrative. If I wasn't, I wouldn't have so many former alt-righters in my community. But if you're not going... That is
good for Vaush to add that nuance, I guess.
...to be de-radicalized, if we can magically assume that you're going to stay a Nazi your whole life or whatever, I think the best thing you can do for your country is to fight and die defending it against Russia. That way, you defend against Russia, and you rid Ukraine of your subversive and destructive political ideology. I mean, a great many of them did that down in Mariupol, so it seems they're taking that advice to heart anyway. I know that in reality, people always have the ability to...
You can tell that Anna's... little jittery here. She didn't, I don't know if she expected that response or not, or exactly what response she expected from Vaush, knowing that she wanted to talk to him about this for a while, but, he seemed, little, I don't know what to say, doozled over that.
to change, but also in reality, oftentimes they don't. And there are really bad consequences to the valorization of far-right ultra-nationalist military brigades, you know, in the context of making them national heroes. We saw what that did with Bandera, after all. I mean, he was a Nazi collaborator and hailed as a hero of Ukraine because the ultra-nationalist element was seen as a,
Not because he was a Nazi.
No,
because he was fighting against Soviet Union and Nazis.
Exactly, but he was a Nazi collaborator until they rejected him.
At a point, yes.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right?
Sure.
Being an ultra-nationalist means that you get to be a hero in spite of having done that, and that's my concern.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what I worry about. It whitewashes, you know?
3 things. First thing, you said that you don't mind and cannot mind like Nazis dying. You think it's like a good thing, essentially. But you yourself admitted that that you don't know if the most of the Azov battalion are Nazis.
Nope.
So when you did not wrote Nazis in Azov should
True.
put guns in their mouths and kill themselves. You did not say dox the locations of Nazis in Azov battalion.
True, he hasn't corrected that, by the way. Did he actually say that seriously? I assume he's just not. I'm just gonna assume it's a joke because that would be really bad if he actually said that unironically at one point.
You said just Azov battalion, and most of people there are not Nazis. That's the first thing. So I really don't get how it explains why it's okay to say that, because I understand wishing Nazis to die. But you said yourself, you don't know. Are they Nazis? Are they not? You don't know.
Well, it would be like...
that's one thing.
Oh, I just want to say, it would be like me saying, I don't really care about, like, Wehrmacht losses in the siege of Stalingrad.
Not really a good... not really good comparison. I don't think, because the Wehrmacht served a greater purpose of invading other countries, genociding other countries, doing all these horrific, nonsensical things, and that was the greater purpose they were working towards. And they were being led by like political commissars who made sure they acted in a certain way to genocide systematically the civilian populations, where Azov has been accused of war crimes. Some of them not true, like the crucifixion story that I saw, that you see sometimes. But a lot of them having more credibility, like accusations of torture. Because Azov, definitely during the earlier days, especially during the earlier days, during all the chaos that was Ukraine in 2014 post-Euromaidan, has been accused of committing some atrocities. I mean, that's just a fact. And this isn't like, oh, some like random like Telegram channel said this. It was stuff that's been presented at the United Nations. So I just want to be clear. Azov has engaged in brutal acts, true, but nothing in comparison to the Wehrmacht and the activities they were involved in, or what they served, or even the percentage of Nazis that was in the Wehrmacht. Like diehard Nazi believers, I would say, is much higher. It's not even, I wouldn't even, it's comparable. But I assume Vaush is going to move over to a better good faith, maybe. I don't know if this is bad faith. I don't think it's bad faith, but I hope they move over to a better comparison, I think we always move over to World War II because World War II Nazis, it's the big war everyone knows. Maybe we can get over to another one, a different comparison.
The majority of the Wehrmacht weren't like committed ideological Nazis. A lot of them were just dipshit German recruits.
Are we really doing that? Are we really comparing those people to Wehrmacht?
Yeah, like, remember, again, you gotta remember, she's from Kharkiv. So these are the soldiers that have directly been involved in defending her city. Vaush made a statement like, hey, they should all kill themselves. And now it was like the Wehrmacht comparison. I know it gets really emotional later, and I just want to, like, this is the stuff, I just want to put that there because, again, last time I bring it up, this is very personal for her.
Well,
those people who literally defend their homeland, did not hurt a fucking anyone, did not do any anti-Jewish pogroms, did not commit any crimes, did not have this rhetoric published anywhere.
I will, again, I gotta push back, and this was, I watched up to about this point. this right here, Azov has been accused of committing crimes, and war crimes. Many of them, like the crucifixus story, probably not true, but others have more credibility to them, and have been presented at, again, the United Nations when it comes to torture being the one thing that I think especially had, I think, the most credibility. So the idea that they haven't committed any crimes in the last 8 years is just not true.
Do we are we like truly comparing this? You think a good comparison?
I'm only talking about Nazi affiliated or associated military groups in which not every member is an actual Nazi. In the Wehrmacht, there were tons of people, even towards the end, like post Battle of the Bulge, you know, when the Germans were fighting in Germany. The majority of the people who were recruited to the Wehrmacht by that point were like 15-year-old
again, this is not
boys.
Wait, also, I don't think that's true. The majority post Battle of the Bulge were 15-year-old boys? No, like they were getting, I think they were getting more just like random locals who were working in factories and in other industries, non-vital industries for the economy. Well, no factories, not less factories, but like non-vital issues for the economy, as well as like elderly people. I don't think it was over 50%, but I understand the point he's making, but I don't think that number is accurate.
I mean, they were, you know, hardly like the like SS members, hardly like ideological warriors of Nazism.
They were recruited in a Nazi army, in a country that attacked other people, that committed genocides. You cannot possibly compare people who went to defend their homeland to this. It's just,
I think it would
doesn't
depend.
work.
It would depend on their reasoning. In terms of like
reasoning was defend my homeland from Russia. That's the
the problem is he's saying it would depend on their reasoning is what he's saying. Yes, but again, he's acknowledged that not everybody in Azov is a Nazi. I would even assume that he would say the majority of them are not. Because the number I think he often cites the 10 or 20% number. But he said like all of them die, right? And so the easy thing to do here, my opinion, would be saying, well, you know, but again, I can't tell Vaush what his opinion has to be. Well, you know, I think that number, that statement was made in maybe like a burst of anger, in reaction to the very disgusting video about Azov soldiers dipping bullets in pig's blood. I just think it should be those guys who did that thing that kicked the can, not all Azov soldiers. That would be a way for him to like reel in his take that I think would be very productive to move the conversation forward.
Reasoning?
Yes, but it really depends on why they're doing it as well. And this is why I worry about ultra-nationalism.
Somebody just posted in chat, there were child soldiers in Nazi Germany. Yes, I understand there were child soldiers in Nazi Germany, but Vaush said that over 50% of them after the Battle of the Bulge, 50% of soldiers after the Battle of the Bulge recruited were 15 or younger, or like around the age of 15, like child soldiers and stuff. I don't think that's true. I don't know if it is. If it is, then I'm just wrong. But I would have thought that it would have been more elderly people would have made a higher percentage, and or the people working in not essential factory job or not essential industries.
Being a kind of whitewashing force for like far right neo-Nazism, right? You can want to defend your homeland for very wrong reasons. It's true that the Azov battalion is fighting a defensive war, and the Wehrmacht was most certainly not. But in terms of like the moral character of the people in those armies. In the SS, pretty much everyone was a Nazi. There's no getting around that. But in the Wehrmacht, the reasons people would have joined up or been recruited would vary enormously. To give you another example of this like principle in action, I don't think the majority of the people who are invading Ukraine, like Russian soldiers, are ideologically anti-Ukraine. I mean, a lot of them are conscripts, and a lot of them are just you know,
a lot of them are, but not all, for sure.
I'm sure a lot of them are, but hardly all of them. But for the same reason, when I see Russian soldiers killed in Ukraine, I know a lot of those people are probably good people who are just by sociological circumstance thrown into situations in which they are playing the bad guy, but they are still the invaders. And for that reason,
again,
I can't...
there are invaders. There are invaders. We're not, and we never have been.
Yes, but in that instance, we're just talking about like whether or not every member of that group is an adherent to an ideology or belief system that I think is harmful, even if there was a purely defensive conflict.
Sure, but you don't know the reasoning. You don't know who these people are. You yourself said that you don't know if there are Nazis. And I'm pretty sure that at least half of them, if not more, are not. So I explained to you the situation already. And yeah, so this is my issue. I don't think it's a good way to do it. I don't think I, again, respect you. This is nothing like, you know, I'm not like trying to paint you as like a awful person for saying that. I'm just trying to explain that to me, it's very brutal to say something like that to people who are, first of all, defenders of this country.
It is brutal. And I mean, like, that was the reason Vaush said it. I think Vaush said the whole, like, they should all, like, die thing because, you know, in a way it was brutal. It was like he saw something that was brutal and disgusting, the covering of the bullet in pig's blood, and so he gave a brutal reaction and he punched back at it, but said, oh, they should all die. Again, I think just reeling in the take slightly could really be super productive here. I already feel like he kind of did earlier when he not, you know, I'll just let it keep going. If he says it again, I'll bring it up because it might have just been a misspeak. I don't want to be dishonest in this conversation at all.
And second of all, are not Nazis. Not all of them, not even the half of them.
Okay.
So if they were like actively committing like some shit against Jews, if they were like, even if they were talking about it, that's another conversation, but they don't.
To use a specifically defensive context then, to be a little bit more broad, only using like the defensive force involved.
Okay,
I also
this is the last I'm going to respond to it. Somebody just posted in chat. The basic unit was a battalion of and you're like posting a bunch of information about how the units later on in the war were made up more of Hitler Youth, the invalids, the elderly, and the men who previously haven't been considered for military service because of like different issues. What you're saying right now does not affirm Vaush's thing that it was over 50% were children. I just don't think that's a historical fact. If you have anything that could back that up, I would like to see it because that would be an astounding fact. I'm not saying that to defend the Nazis. I'm saying that because I just don't think it's true. That would be an astounding fact. But I just don't think that's true. I do think there was a lot during the end of the war, a lot of children, a lot of child soldiers the Nazis used. I just don't think it was 50% of the new recruits past Battle of the Bulge. I just don't think that's true. Last time I responded to that.
Would not care that much about the death of Polish ultranationalists during the invasion from Nazi Germany in '39, or right-wing ultranationalist Brits who were killed in the Blitz by the Luftwaffe. In large part because even if they're on the defensive side of things, we're talking about people with...
Wait. Sorry. Let me go back. Let me hear that again. I was taking a sip. I was distracted. Did I hear what I thought I heard?
Ultranationalists during... I also would not care that much about the death of Polish ultranationalists during the invasion from Nazi Germany in '39, or right-wing ultranationalist Brits who were killed in the Blitz by the Luftwaffe.
Okay, so we're saying ultra-nationalists, so we're not saying, like, not... And, like, when he says that, does he... I think he needs to make a... What? I assume that he means just, like people serving in the military, and not just, like, right-wing people. Like, people look at, like, the voting map in, like, Westminster, and if the Nazis said, you know, bomb this area, there's a lot of British nationalists, then they bomb that area. That's morally good because more far right people die. Because that type of logic, I think, like led to like the Holodomor and stuff like that. Not exactly. I don't want to, but the idea of like kind of just hoping that the tragedy befalls this group or that group because you know the possible political disagreements down the future like need to like we need to eliminate them. It's a little different because obviously ethnicity and different, but like I think that basically grabbing people who have political disagreements with you, putting them all in a penal battalion, and sending them to die would be bad, right? I think we would all acknowledge that would be bad. I guess I need to hear a clarification. Did he mean like civilians or military? And does he mean like just like penal battalion if we sent them all to die? Penal battalion style, would that be good or bad? Like I need to... Let me just wait. Let me hear more clarification.
In large part because even if they're on the defensive side of things, we're talking about people with...
I said penile battalion multiple times. Penal battalion.
Ultranationalist Brits who were killed in the Blitz by the Luftwaffe. in large part because even if they're on the defensive side of things, we're talking about people with fundamentally genocidal ideologies, or like the Ku Klux Klan or something, or ultra far right, or like there were divisions of U.S.
Okay, so this is a separate conversation, and this is an interesting conversation, but remember, they've both already acknowledged that Azov is not just made up of the far right, and Anna has put in great detail to talk about how the group has changed and the difference between the military group and the political group, like, and its founder and the split that it's made. And so this would be, I think, maybe a possible good argument if it was, the Wehrmacht or a different army like that, but I really feel like this doesn't address Anna's concerns at all.
Pacific military brigades who fought against the Japanese, horribly racist, who went out there and combated them. And I don't really care about their losses either, whether or not every single member of these groups is like ultra far right aligned or whatever. As a general association, like,
here's a question. This is I actually don't know how Vaush would answer to this. Do you think it would be okay if a government killed people because of their ideology? I think that's a very basic question. I assume Vaush would say no, but I'm just curious because I actually don't 100% know, leaving this conversation or listening to him.
Like, the point that I'm making is that a war which at its end sees the fewest number of far-right people.
Like, if someone was sufficiently racist, do we put them in like a penal battalion and sent them to go like die in the Somme because they were like they met like this level of racism? Would he approve said program? I'd be interested in hearing that. He has said no to that question. Killing people who disagree with him, okay, but if he could, in a position as a commander, send more far-right nationalists to die than other political groups, he would. So, like, this kind of penal battalion question I'm asking.
Alive is one which, ensures the greatest likelihood of peace at the end. Obviously, the greatest priority is Ukraine winning, but that's why I think that the Azov battalion should be allowed to fight, and I've encouraged that.
So for you, the general association with a far-right ideology is enough to condemn people to die?
Well, I'm not actually condemning people to die. I'm making a sort of errant statement on group affiliation, which I would in many other cases. I've made jokes about 9/11. I don't think it's out of line.
I see.
At least in this case, we're talking about people who have the potential to do real harm.
Well, okay. So on one hand, he said like this is a joke, right? Which if that's he's saying that his original comment about they should all basically die in combat or kill themselves or dox their info, whatever, was a joke. But then he like goes on to say like, hey, this is these people can do real harm. So it felt like he was saying it's a joke, but also it's not a joke. Like it's hard for me to really splice exactly whether he still stands by that statement as a joke or not a joke. And so I think like the easiest question would to ask is, do you think it'd be good if all the Azov people like just restate the statement? Do you still stand by that statement rather than the general conversation we're having now? Because I feel like that's what Anna's looking for, is for him to say, obviously not all of them are Nazis, and I don't want any of the people who are in Azov that are not Nazis to die, obviously. Let me reel this in and just say, maybe I just want Nazis in the conflict generally to die, the people who are Zikhali Nazis. And even if, including the fact that on average, Azov is going to have a higher percentage of those because of its history. That would be like the real in conversation that I think should happen here. I feel like that's not where this is going to go. Maybe it goes there, but I don't feel it yet.
But how do we know that?
Because
I mean, they have zero power.
Battalion.
They are not glorified because some of them are anti-Semitic. They're glorified because they literally spilled blood for me to sit here.
Like Bandera.
That's why they're glorified.
They're glorified
Yes.
for being ultranationalists as a way of covering up their far-right
To be quite fair,
views.
Bandera is pretty controversial figure because unlike Azov, he actually did kill Jews. So, you know, he's way worse in that sense because he's literally on UPA did commit crimes against Jews and Poles as well.
Do you think the Azov would if they had the ability?
No.
Would Azov commit crimes against Jews if they had the ability? The majority of them probably not. No. I think again, as I've said for most of this, on average, I think if there was to be a group in the Ukrainian military that was going to have a more war crimey potential when interacting with Jewish people, I think Azov would rank higher on the list. But I think the majority of Azov fighters would not. In fact, recently there was a video that I saw getting a lot of cackling responses on the internet of like Azov fighters, Azov representatives like dancing with Jews during Hanukkah. That was recorded and posted on the internet. And a lot of I saw like some far right Ukrainians being like, Azov's getting cocked. I can't believe Azov is so cocked now. And I saw other, of course, on the other side, Russians being so angry by the fact that was happening. That combined with the fact that I think, you know, you don't necessarily need to be anti-Semitic if you're a Ukrainian nationalist. I don't think that's like necessarily like intertwined. And I think the highest percentage, like much higher than the actual Nazis in the group, are the Ukrainian nationalists who, you know, hold some like reverence for like Stefan Bandera or stuff like that. So I would say no, the majority of them wouldn't. And we haven't seen that happen yet. So, you know, 8 years I have yet to see that happen. Honestly, I would say it would probably be more likely with Romani people, if I'm being quite blunt.
Oh,
Why not? It was
definitely
started
not.
by a Nazi.
Because it's not a Nazi battalion anymore. They don't spread that the word. Most of them are just regular people who I personally know, by the way, and who are not Nazis, who are not anti-Semitic in any way, shape, or form. And this is not the vibe. This is not would be if they did. If I knew that one of them actually were incredibly anti-Semitic and committed some kind of crime against a Jew, they should be prosecuted. Fuck that motherfucker. We do not stand for this here.
No, I get that. I'm not impugning you here. But the Azov Battalion was a militia group founded by Nazis who ideologically
8 years ago.
Yes.
There's been a big change.
Their founding has had an influence on the ideological predispositions of the group. Do you think
wait, not an influence. The founder was a Nazi. Let's put it plainly.
Yeah, but the founders' beliefs did have an influence on the group. I mean, it's not that hard to follow.
Not just trying to, sugarcoat it. The founder was straight up a Nazi, but it does not. A lot of them are no longer affiliated with them. People like Nemechev are no longer affiliated with that. With Beletsky as well, they condemned him. They denied any connection with him. And I have no reason to doubt it at this point because they have not. There are no credible organization aside from Russian fakes that truly found them committing any crimes against Jewish people in the occupied areas.
I don't think I know of any evidence of them committing crimes against Jewish people. I specifically Jews. I have no recollection of that.
What you're saying right here, again, this is the thing. I'm not talking about whether or not they've committed crimes against the Jewish people. I'm talking about whether or not it's possible that ideologically they would have did exactly what Bandera had done if the socioeconomic circumstances were permissive. Right now, we don't.
Now, with the makeup right now, I was, probably not. I mean, I think, again, higher on average, but it's like the same thing I've said all day. Higher on average, probably not the majority.
Live in a world where the people in Ukraine can just up and, facilitate a Holocaust. That's just not a thing that can happen right now. But I think that if you went back 80 years, a lot of the people, if taken from now to then in the Azov Battalion, would have been collaborators. Certainly, they're ideologically in line with that. The only difference between now and then is that now they're being given a pretext for ultranationalism and national self-defense. without it being, you know, directly framed through Nazi collaboration. And that's good, but the ideology is still there.
There's nothing in them, in their like ideology. They are battalion. I'm not talking about a political party. Those are two different things. They are not anywhere there. You can see phrases like Ukraine for, you know, white Ukrainians. It's not in their text. It's not something they talk about at all. In fact,
yeah, that's smart of them, right? But the fact that they're not a political party,
so you're incapable of believing that they are true about that. You think they are just hiding their power level, basically.
I mean, the thing is, right? If they are hiding their power level, okay, at a certain point, if you like, you used to be like super anti-Semitic and now you like don't, or let's say, okay, let's say that there is a group of people who are like hardcore, let's say like there's this military group A and there's like, it's full of a lot of hardcore racists dominated by them, started by hardcore racists. And as more people join, as it gets more popular and more attention is brought to the fact that they've got some racism, it, in an attempt to distance itself from it, talks less racism, has more people join that are from minority groups in the country, you know, has all these evolutions go through, and then like years down the line, are we going to see changes in that as they've done everything they can to distance themselves from that, as their leadership who founded them on those principles left and all this stuff? I think that right there, that change is notable and needs to be acknowledged by Vaush in this conversation for it to move forward.
What do you think?
Yeah, I'm sure there are plenty of people in the Azov Battalion.
It needs to be acknowledged, and then they need to acknowledge, and then I would need Vaush to, like, personally, I would need Vaush to acknowledge that he should probably reel in the take on all of them dying, because if he knows that they're not all Nazis, or even the majority of them are not Nazis, then condemning them all to death is probably not a smart idea.
Battalion who do that. That makes sense for a far-right group to do, and they've been doing that all around the world. Again, what we've seen right now in Germany.
Well, he said he didn't condemn them all to death, but saying they all should have killed themselves, or I hope they all die in combat, is not good. I think like just a slight reel back would be perfect here.
Germany. After the fall of the Third Reich, you know, not every Nazi was persecuted, of course. A lot of them have sown seeds in the police and military defense, and right now there are a bunch of like neo-Nazi militias in the like hills of Germany. Because the you know, only 3 generations ago, a lot of those people's ancestors would have themselves been members of the Nazi Party. They keep quiet. They talk about dog whistles. You know, they talk about German sovereignty, and they talk about immigration.
I understand.
And eventually they have.
Yeah, I understand.
Right. Well, we see this in America too. I agree
They're
that
nothing like that.
Well, I agree that not every person in the Azov Battalion is like a card-carrying neo-Nazi.
Okay, there we go. Oh, progress. Progress. Maybe well, he's not committing to a percentage, but that's fine. This is progress. Who cares? You don't need to commit to a percentage. Progress. I think now we need to use this as a jumping off point.
Definitely think there's a predisposition ideologically to the group.
That is true, but I do think that it again higher on average. Okay, we reeled it in a bit, but now let's just pair this with the reel in of his original statement.
Yeah, but again, I did not address this point. It was the initial points you made after I finished talking. One of them was that you are like kind of afraid that they will be, get some power.
He used the word card-carrying Nazi. So what I don't know what you mean by that. Like, is that like a wiggle? You said it's a wiggle room. What does he mean by? Do you think the word card-carrying as saying like they're all fascists and far right and but they're not card carrying? Is that what you're saying? I didn't read it like that. I'm going to give a good faith interpretation of that.
Or something like that. They have like zero power even before Russian invasion. The political party had 0 seats. 0. Nobody voted for those fuckers. Like Beletsky and his party, in the beginning. And in the second election, in both elections. So they have 0 influence. Nobody supports that shit. Like literally, very few people. And what kind of power can they have? People do not praise any of that. People only praise defenders of Azovstal, for example, who, by the way, you wished to die. Those people as
if they're Nazis,
heroes.
sure.
You didn't say that.
That's
you said
true.
Just
He
Azov
didn't.
Battalion.
See, this
Well,
is why I need to
yeah,
slight
like-
reel in, slight
like I-
reel in,
Generalization.
slight reel
They're all
in,
nuts.
slight reel
The
it
same
in.
way
Just
I would
slight reel
say
in.
I don't care if people died in the Wehrmacht, but then
No, we're back to this again. Oh God, it felt like we were there. We had it. It was like we were at the confrontation. Now we're circling back because we're at the point of synthesis with the new point needs to be made. The new, like, hey, you know what? Let's reel in this in a bit. And now we're right back to the beginning. Nope, fucking back to square one.
being like, so what if there was a person in the Wehrmacht who actually
Again,
wasn't?
Wehrmacht.
Wait. This is a valid comparison. If
Okay, let's hear it.
I said, I don't care if people die in the Wehrmacht, and you're like, okay, what if someone was in the Wehrmacht, but they were recruited, they're not an ideological Nazi, and also they want a defect?
Okay, I due to the nature of what they were fighting for and the institutions they were fighting for, war of aggression, genocide, the higher percent, I would even say a much higher percentage of Nazis that were probably present in the Wehrmacht, since again, it was the army of the Nazi war machine. I don't think this is a great comparison. I don't.
And I'm like, okay, well, that
it's
person,
not a good comparison.
I am only, okay, fine, let's use a different comparison.
Perfect, thank you.
In the United
Let's say
States
Vaush.
Civil War, the North invaded the South, but the North were on the defending team. The South started the war at Fort Sumter.
Yeah, no.
Right.
Mhm.
So there were groups of Northerners who were led by generals who were like fully pro-slavery. There were military divisions.
I'm trying to think of anybody I know off the top of my head. I know Sherman didn't really care. He just wanted to like light the South on fire as he went down, reconquering what the traitors took. But yeah, I think Sherman's the one I can think of the back of my head. I don't know if he's pro-slavery, but I know he was at least indifferent.
From the North that
Burn
were
it again,
like
Sherman.
not
Burn
ideologically
it
in
again.
disagreement at all with the South. The only reason they were invading the South was for like national unification. They wanted to stomp the Southern traitors, but they weren't like anti-slavery. They were just on the other team. Now, if I said, let's say there was like a battalion of them called like, I don't know, like Fuckers Battalion, Pickles Battalion, right? The Pickle. Let's go with Pickle. Okay. Pickles Battalion. And Pickles Battalion, they're doing good work, okay? They're shooting Confederates. I love it when they do that. But these people ideologically are pro-slavery. After the Civil War, they are going to fight to keep slavery in the South and push for it in Western expansion. If the people in Pickles Battalion died while fighting, I really wouldn't give a damn. Even if not every soldier in that group was ideologically pro-slavery, you know, and I can get specific if we're talking specifics.
Well, but then you're saying the people who don't believe in Nazism, don't believe in slavery, should die because they're in the group. But the whole reason he wants them to die is because they could affect the future politics of, you know, the United States. But if they're not Nazis, then like what's the problem? Or if they don't believe in slavery, then what's the problem? I don't understand that.
It's like, okay, well, maybe that person just signed up because of this reason or that reason. But I think it would be okay for me to say broadly, like, yeah, I don't really care if they lose this battle because at the end of the day, they're only on the right side because they happen to be born there. They aren't ideologically in the right. And the Azov Battalion also is not ideologically in the right. They defend Ukraine because they're in Ukraine. But ideologically, a lot of those people are
I see.
advocates of politics
understand.
worse than what Russia advocates for.
I understand. You think?
Not all of them, of course, but a lot of them.
Deeply disagree with everything you just said because not because it's a bad comparison. This one is better, but I know where
Still has problems, but it is better.
we disagree. Actually, it's not the. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I would agree with it 100% actually if they were actually ideologically propagating awful things, and most of them are not.
We're back to this.
And they have zero power.
We're back to this, man. It's just gonna keep circling.
So yeah, so this is why we disagree, because you see them as this like originally evil force, basically. Sorry for using this colorful language, but basically, you know, like this, the
Vaush wants to say fuck the pro-slavery battalion, whether having to quibble about whatever percentage of them aren't pro-slavery. Yeah, but okay, here's the problem. If over 8 years, due to a number of circumstances, the pro-slavery battalion is now dancing with has soldiers dancing with black people, as the majority of them no longer believe in slavery, like I would assume, due to its history, that has a higher percentage of people pro-slavery. But if the argument is, and it seems Vaush hasn't pushed back upon this, and Anna continues to assert this, so it seems that they've accepted this, even if some people watching haven't accepted this, that not the majority of them are like card-carrying, I guess that's the word you're using, Nazis, then like what's the purpose? Because he's saying, like, they die for the future safety of Ukraine so it isn't captured by the insane right. But if he's acknowledging that the majority of them, or that there's a lot of them that aren't like that, then wouldn't the easy reel-in just be like, no, I just want the people who are like the Nazi types to die, not the ones who are not in that group, which would immediately end this conversation and it would be over. And I don't think that would be too hard of a jump. It seems like an easy jump to make.
force that is potentially will, you know, bring some very evil stuff. But I just don't think it is. It's not like that. Most of them are just regular people from Kharkiv, from Donbass, who are not Nazis.
That's the case for all armies.
Not really. I mean, in a sense,
all
we wouldn't
armies
call
are
it
composed
like that,
mostly
right?
of normal people.
People are saying, like, that's a fair point. It's just a weird scenario because a lot of the imagery is still Nazi-esque. It'd be like somebody telling me the new KKK with slightly different robes and yeah, I understand. Yeah, 100%. I understand.
Yeah, Azov is not the entire army. You know that. I'm not going even to address that. It's like
But
1,000
all
people.
battalions are
you guys know that.
mostly of normal people, right? Like you could literally any army, any force.
Yes,
from
but
the
what I'm
Mongol
trying to
hordes
say is that it is not their ideological drive anymore. It's not. They're not there to. There's just no point in that in Ukraine at whatsoever. Let me tell you a little bit of a story, just to address why it's so. I guess I cannot breach this. Maybe I don't have like the words for it, and I will tell you. I understand what you mean. I just understand that we are seeing things differently in that sense because I don't see them as this threat as you do. I don't see them as this, ideologically evil force that has some good people in it by chance. I don't see them like that. So this is why I guess we disagree, because the examples you bring I would actually agree with. I just don't see Azov as those examples, and this is why basically. So here's the thing. I told this story I think to Not So Erudite. I think you know her. I think you talked with her, Kyla. The story basically is about my friend who I met him when I was in the university, and he initially escaped from Russian invasion in 2014. He was from Mariupol. And basically what happened is he and other people, most of my friends are from Donbass for some reason, I don't know why it happened in the university. Basically, they all moved to other cities in Ukraine, right? To not be occupied by Russia and not to be part of this Donetsk People's Republic shit. You know probably about it. So they moved to Kharkiv, to Kiev, to other cities, basically. So let's call him Stas. He moved as well. So he...
Have you heard the story before? Like a variation of it, yeah.
Moved
Vaguely.
to Kharkiv. But then he just couldn't deal with this shit, and he told us, me and my best friend who is now fighting, that he will be enlisting to defend his home. He cannot let Russians take it, and he just cannot allow it. He wants to defend his home, his loved ones, and Mariupol was, as you probably know, back in the day, indeed defended. So they did not let Russians take it, basically.
Yep.
And he then, oh, sorry, my computer is about to die. Fuck. No. Don't do that. I'm in it.
Damn.
So he enlisted in Azov.
FSB attack.
Which was the only battalion at the time that defended, east. And also a lot of them were from Mariupol. And he wanted to defend his hometown first and foremost. And
that's another thing. A lot of the definitely since it's been integrated officially into the Ukrainian military, this has happened more and more and more as it moves forward, that a lot of these groups are very regional. And so a lot of times it's just going to be like, you live here, therefore you join this group because that's the group there, right? And a lot of times that's just how it's going to go. And if you're a Ukrainian and you hear Azov, of course I'm going to be the one to join Azov. They're the people from Mariupol. That's what I get the read of from the people, the more normie-pilled people that have joined Azov. Is a lot of them are have they heard about them, you know, in the press because of their escapades in Mariupol. I don't want to call it escapades, but because of what happened in Mariupol, or it's regionals because, you know, it's from their area.
And since then, for 8 years, he has been fighting in the battalion and fighting for Ukraine. And then when this phase of war began in February, he was the one who also, you know, they had amazing experience in fighting. They were like one of the best soldiers at that point. So they were sent to the toughest places, like Mariupol, which you probably know. I think you heard, right? You talked about it, I think, about Azovstal.
Yes.
And so he was there. And and we lost connection with him. And basically the last thing he said was that he's going to probably kill himself because, sorry, a bit emotional. So he apologized. So he basically said he was going to kill himself because he doesn't want to be taken by Russians. He knows what they do. He knows what they do to, especially Azov prisoners.
Yeah, they've executed a lot of Azov boys.
You can imagine, probably they were like, their image in Russia is very inflated in this, like, this boogeyman, you know, Nazi stuff. And they are like, many Russians show Azov soldiers captured ones as an example. They like torture them, do horrendous shit with them, honestly, like genitalia mutilation, like they look like concentration camp victims.
I've seen the video where a Ukrainian soldier is castrated on camera by Russian soldiers. I don't know if she's referring to that video. I don't know if that guy was Azov or not, but I have seen that video. It's really, really graphic. It's really bad. I would not recommend seeing it.
When the ones we got back. So he knew that his comrades were taken, and he said that he is very injured, and he participated in taking more than thousands of people out, civilians out of Azovstal building. So he saved thousands of lives, this person, and he then decided to basically shoot himself. Yeah, I don't know honestly if he did. Maybe he got taken, but this was basically the moment when I saw you saying that they should put guns in their mouths and shoot themselves. So yeah, sorry. Fuck, I don't know, I'm crying, stupid. So basically, yeah, I'm sorry for the emotions, but this is something I want you to consider. The man was Jewish Greek, not a Nazi.
Fun fact, I feel weird saying fun fact right now, but Jews and Greeks are actually some of I think the oldest documented groups in Ukraine that have there's like a trail that you can document in Ukraine. They have some of the oldest legacy and tie to Ukrainian, like the area that is now modern day Ukraine.
A lot of them in Mariupol, by the way, Jewish Greeks for some reason. So yeah, this is the man. He basically wished to kill themselves, and I think he took your advice. So yeah, that's the story. And this is a regular person in Azov. He was never anti-Semitic. He was a Jewish person, religiously Jewish, by the way, ethnically Jewish. He was incredibly kind, and very actually kind of liberal in terms of like Ukraine. So very like even pro-LGBT, feminist. You know, not feminist. He didn't call himself out, but he was like pro women. It's cringe here for people, men especially, to call themselves feminists. So they would never say it, but he was like very pro women, pro choice, you know, decent person in all accounts. So this is a regular person in Azov, my friend who went to defend their homeland. But you, for some reason, and many other people are hell-bent on thinking all of them are Nazis just because the original creation was done by a Nazi. So yeah, sorry.
I'm very sorry that has happened.
Yeah.
You don't need to apologize for crying. It's a perfectly reasonable thing to get emotional over. I do take issue with your framing. You didn't take my advice. You never heard what I had to say. I want to be clear because I feel like we have to apply a non-selective standard for the way in which we talk about stuff like this. There are good people in
he didn't hear what Vaush had to say, so he didn't take his advice, but he did do what Vaush said that they should do. And I think that was what she was getting at.
Every fighting force that has ever existed in humanity, if you were able to sort through all of them, you could probably find some morally good SS members, like people who are secretly waiting for the regime to fall or whatever. I mean,
again, it's just, I mean, I understand what he's saying here, but it's just not comparable. And like, dude, it would be such the easiest thing in the world to just be like, look, I think that statement was a little off the cuff in reaction to this, you know, bullet anti-Muslim video where they dipped the bullets in pig's blood. I just wish the people who made that video, or just the Nazis in them, would die, or like just like the slightest of real ends would really, I think, go a long way here.
literally anything, like even the most morally heinous. When you make broad denunciations of literally any fighting force, invariably you're going to be wrapping, not just fighting force, groups of people. You're going to be wrapping in people who are undeserving of poor consideration. If you are talking about, like, I've talked about the Saudi royal family, I have talked about the military of North Korea, I've talked about the Russian military, I've talked about so many different groups with broad denunciations. I speak in historical terms. Which groups do I want to see survive after all of this is done? The answer is going to be obvious every time. I don't want any far-right group to survive, because those are the people that create the conflicts that end up killing more people down the line. Obviously, if you take a look at any historical conflict in World War II, who do I want coming out on the other side? Well, in the grand scheme of things, obviously, the people who won't do a second Holocaust. I mean, that seems reasonable. With regards to the Azov Battalion, I want to be clear. This gets caught up in a lot of, like, anti-Ukrainian narrativizing that I have never bought into. Are there Nazis in the Ukrainian military? Yes. Are there in the American military? Yes. Are there in the Russian government? Yes. They are everywhere, unfortunately.
That's but true.
It's a popular ideology. And I have never bought into the idea that...
Here's a question for Vaush. Let's say he heard that there was a battalion in the Ukrainian and in the American military that had, let's say a news story broke that the 22nd Rifle Brigade, I don't know, had, let's say it was like the highest possible percentage, 20% Nazis from the old numbers that the original guys like proposed for the amount of Nazis that were in the group, like 20%. Would Vaush say that they should all kill themselves, everybody in that brigade? Would he say that he hopes everybody in that brigade kills themselves? I would assume not. Because if the context was there were people of that brigade like actively fighting a defensive war, I would assume even more so not. He would say yes. I doubt he would say that. I also doubt he would say it because I think I think that's too hot, spicy for Vaush, even considering now we're talking the American military and all hail the troops, right? Love the troops.
That the existence of Azov, no matter its prominence in some forms of media or how often they flash their black suns at the cameras when they're given the opportunity, represents some kind of
corrupt, bankrupt man.
I gotta say, like, from the photos and video that I see, I and from my personal experience, I didn't feel like they were fighting really hard to get the symbols in. I think again, it's you know, confirmation bias in the regions that are being fought over. Kalo, thank you so much for the tier 1 beats up for 9 months.
Innately far-right tendency in the Ukrainian military. The Ukrainian military... and
he would word it differently. He would say, I hope none of the far-right soldiers return. Exactly. It would be worded differently. And if he was just to word that in this one, like, I hope that the far-right soldiers don't return, the conversation changes. And there's still even a conversation to be had there, right, about that statement. But we haven't even, like, gotten past this first hurdle of the possible walk back of the original, like, very, you would say, reactive statement to the bullet video. And so it feels like we haven't even gotten there.
And people, as far as I can tell, are more liberal leaning than the US in a lot of ways. They might end up being one of the strongest bastions of liberal democracy.
I hear you, and I get you, but this feels like language policing. I feel like a Ukrainian confronting a streamer about the language they have used to describe people that they personally know who have died fighting to defend their communities is absolutely appropriate, not language policing at all. You could be like, Vaush was too hyperbolic and could reel it in. I think sometimes you can police people's language, and I think it's good to police people's language. For example, let's say I was like, you know what? I think Mitt Romney is a Nazi. I think that would be irresponsible use of the word, and I want somebody to police my language if I did that, because it would be irresponsible, because like we know the difference between, say, a Richard Spencer type from you know Jews will not replace us and Mitt Romney. Like, that language difference is important, and we call it language policing, but like, language is important. The way we use words and the way we describe people is important. And I think you can call it language policing, but I think give me the language badge, then I will do it if necessary.
See, in the West, after what's going on right now in the US and Western Europe. The reason I'm saying all of this is because I want to put like properly into context the things that I have said. You talk about whether or not a broad statement about military fighting forces is made valid based on whether they're on the defense or attacking, whether they're legitimate or illegitimate in their broader course. And I understand that. I want the Azov Battalion to contribute to a victory against Russia, after all. But in the long term, in the grand,
I want them to die in the process.
In the grand scheme of things, a world with fewer Nazis, however many of them there were before and are now, is a world more likely to have fewer people die needlessly in the future. As far as I'm concerned, the only reason the Russian invasion is happening is...
But again, we're right back to it. And she's going to say, but the majority of people in Azov are not Nazis. And then we're just right back to where it is. We're just circling and circling and circling and circling.
Because of the Nazi-ish tendencies in the Kremlin. It's a recurring problem.
I would call them fascists more. Like, Nazis is not there, like, they're not
they
there,
lean
like,
in.
anti-Semitic. Yeah.
They
lean in for sure. Like, fascists for sure, yes.
They
but,
lean
yeah,
in.
they're not. It's a bit hard to lean in because, like I said, their whole identity is built on winning against Nazis, you know? So it's really hard in Russia, again, like in Ukraine, to sell Nazism.
We see a lot of that here too,
yeah.
Because there are a lot of like pro-Russia, like tanky types, you know, who are ideologically fully in line with Nazis. Like, literally, they won't say Jews, they'll say Soros, but apart from that, they'll basically...
Yeah, I know that's up, yeah.
Yeah, this recurring issue, you know, and I would say the same in literally any other conflict. For instance, the U.S. and...
You saw the part where you do remember he was trying to make the point that it doesn't need to be majority Nazi to be problematic. You can acknowledge an organization. Look, I think the ATF is problematic, right? I think a lot of organizations are problematic. And if we want to get more specific, I even think that there are certain groups in the American government that probably have a higher rate on average of Nazis or neo-Nazism or far-right, beliefs than other groups. But that doesn't mean I would condemn every single member of that group to kill themselves, right? Easiest reeling in the world, and then we could discuss whether purposefully being like, hey, should we send these people to die because they are far-right or ultra-nationalist, whether that's a good idea to send people to die for their political beliefs because of their political beliefs. Like, you're specifically, you know what we did with black soldiers in Vietnam when it comes to, like, we put them in the area of danger more often, just doing that, but instead, of course, it's very different because race and doing that, but instead with ideology, whether that's a slippery slope, whether that's a good idea. But I think it might also, and this is something I would have to ask Vaush directly, because there's a difference between saying, I don't care if they die, right? And actively saying, like, I want these people to die and I need them to go out and die, right? That is very different, right? For example, somebody saying, I don't care that Daria Dugina died is a different moral argument than say, you would have to make a different moral argument for that than saying, I'm happy that Daria Dugina died and it's good that she died, right? These are two different things. So I would want to have maybe a one-on-one conversation about Vaush on that.
invasion of Iraq, right? Or in Afghanistan, right? We were the invaders in Afghanistan, but generally speaking, the Taliban were far, far worse than we are. You know, like in terms of moral disposition and political prescriptions, we may have invaded Afghanistan, but the Taliban are way worse in terms of what they want to do with Afghanistan relative to us. And we can see that now in our absence, what they have done. The point that I'm trying to get at is that in all of these conflicts, all of these sides, whether we're talking winner, loser, invader, defender, so on and so forth, I have made many sweeping claims about which groups I want to win, which sides I want to see take prominence, which groups I think are more or less harmful, more or less deserving of death. But these ascriptions don't survive individual scrutiny. None of these are meant to be denunciations of any individuals because I don't know those individuals. Every person who from a distance is a member of some Nazi militia might interpersonally be like having doubts, or they might be totally in disagreement ideologically with the people around them, but are going along with it because they really want to defend their country, or so on and so forth. This is the case in all these groups.
You know, I would give this more credibility if he pushed back on the idea that the majority of them are no longer Nazis. If he was saying, no, I think the majority of them are Nazis, like 80%, 90%. If he was to push that, then I'd be like, okay, well then I think this is, like, under his framework, this is more justifiable. But if the majority of the people you're condemning to death are not even part of the political ideology you said should be condemned to death, right? Which he hasn't pushed back on that yet, right? Despite if you believe that or not. I don't then what's the point? Like, it feels like you're condemning more innocent people to die than actual Nazis, you know? Innocent of course, the crime of being Nazis and the Vaushite worldview.
I often engage in pretty like flippant language, and I think that for the most part, this is like a fine thing to do. I don't mind doing that, but I want to make it clear.
What's your estimation of the Nazi percentage? 1 second. Let me do the quick. Exactly 4.92%. Like, I don't know. Like, it's impossible to say. But small. A small, not the majority, at the very least, yeah.
Whether I'm being inconsistent here or not with how flippant I was with talking about the Azov.
When I say small, I don't mean a relative small. I mean a small as in like a total or not like a majority or not majority.
Italian people. The proper meaning of my statements, when given the highest level of scrutiny, are that I want even the Nazis in the Azov battalion, even the people who ideologically I would condemn like right across the line, I want them to contribute to a successful defense of Russia. As long as they are Nazis, for those who actually are, their ideology is one of genocide and they would have me dead. And so I cannot mourn their death. If I...
Okay, but mourning the death is different than telling them to kill themselves, A. And B, whatever. I've said this a million times, but majority, blah, 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 I already said it.
Speak in groups.
Yes.
Any groups. People who are not Nazis will be caught into this. But...
Sorry, I would like to say, I think I maybe gave a wrong impression to people, which people hate you a lot, so I would like to correct it for people not thinking that I'm doing that. I don't think you like bought in that all Ukrainians are Nazis. I'm perfectly aware. It's not even the point to talk about it because I've seen what what you say about it.
It's not true. I was at Anna's apartment and she had a little like, it was really weird. I don't know why she's lying about this. In the corridor where we would hide during the the bombing and stuff, she has like this little cabinet, and I don't think she noticed, but like I just like barely woke up, I was wiping my eyes, and she had like a little shrine, and there was like a little Vaush voodoo doll that she was like poking with like a needle. It's like, you fucking Kremlin shill. It was a really weird moment, honestly. Really out of character for Anna.
About it, on what your community says about it.
All Americans
yeah, I also I also did not mean like that you literally at fault for that person, my friend, dying. Obviously not. He did not see you say that, and and it's it's nothing like that. I just meant to imply that you have to maybe like consider like the language and what I guess the meaning of words, I guess, in that sense.
Like, no, like the thing is, right? after seeing, like, if you know the original clip he was reacting to, it's not even like that surprising while Vaush reacted with like a kind of lack of nuance, like, let him die, right? Not saying it was the right moral thing to say, but it's not that difficult to figure out why he said that. I mean, considering the clip he was originally reacting to when he said it.
Because what you said is not why he, you know, possibly is dead or captured. Of course not. But that is flip.
Anton Grimes redeemed, asked for subs. For every sub you give me,
immoral,
I will take a needle
corrupt,
and Anna's anti-Vaush shrine, and I will add another one into Vaush, including the one she put in Vaush's ear tons of years ago. That's actually where it came from. The many ear problems Vaush has been having was from Anna's spells. Really bad stuff. You know how it is with witches in Ukraine and stuff. The witchcraft is really big over there. The Russians talk about it all the time. Ruffled Dog redeemed, asked for sub. Thank you. Evil City, thanks for gifting it tier 1.
Flippant, I guess, disregard for their lives is what bothers me. I guess it's a good way to put it. Not from you even specifically, but from many people. And
Even the actual
and
Nazis?
I don't think. Well, I guess so. I don't think they deserve death. They don't have like the, you know, the power right now to, and they won't have it and here afterwards as well. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that most people talk about it in the way that they hate Nazism, they hate fascism, they call Russian fascists here in Ukraine all the time, like Ukrainians do, right? So this is not something, I don't think they want that to.
Some people say, ma'am, run that back. Can I be honest, right? Somebody saying, I don't think all Nazis should die, right, is a very liberal, libtard take, right? I don't know why people are that surprised by it. Like the idea, like, well, they're wrong, but you shouldn't kill people you disagree with, is like a very like libtard take, right? So it's not that surprising that a somebody who is not a communist or a socialist like Vaush would take the liberal take of, like, you know, free market of ideas. Captain Gwendolyn, thank you for the Prime and being sub for 5 months. Currently on a 1 month streak. I appreciate it. Here you go, Dylan. You deserve Primarino King. And also, can I just say, I do agree with the basic idea that we shouldn't just go around shooting people for being fascist, unless, you know, they become an actual threat of taking over. I just think it's a bad idea to like have the thought police going around and doing that. We should do everything to stop them from gaining power, of course.
To be, most of them are in any way will try to or want to create any like far nationalist waves here or Nazi waves, and they don't have the power for it. So I'm not worried about it. If they did,
we thought that over here as well, though, is the issue, right? I mean, it's ideologically. I mean, well, ideologically, a Nazi would be committed to my death. Like it's not even a conditional thing. By virtue of my blood, I would be on the chopping block for them. And for that reason,
why is that?
Well, I mean, it depends. Is it like what type of Nazi are we talking about? Like traditional skinhead type of like Zig Heil like type guy? Are we talking like, you know, like Nick Fuentes at the end of the name? You know, they're gonna be a little bit more. If you just look genuinely, you're generally whitish, then like I guess you pass the race test. Like what type of Nazi? I guess it would depend for Vaush, because I think he would easily pass the Nick Fuentes test if Nick Fuentes was the new Führer of the United States. This would depend on the person. Oh, somebody gifted a sub, and I think I missed it. Well, whoever it was, thank you. I appreciate it. Oh, Captain Gwendolyn.
Are you a Jew actually or something?
They would I've certainly been called one by them. No,
I've been too as well.
Right.
The nose, you know.
They do
Yeah.
they do like that. No, it would be, I assume, for my homosexual tendencies.
You know what? Yeah, you can't really get around that. Okay, yep, fair enough.
As well, so you know.
Well, then there we go.
I'm not the biggest fan of these guys, as you can probably imagine. They're not the biggest fans of me.
For me,
yeah,
it's not a matter.
Right sector, which honestly scares me more than Azov, because they haven't done the whole milk toasting of their ideology really at all. They were involved in a lot of anti-queer activity in the lead up to the war that inevitably happened in 2014. They were involved in a lot of like anti-queer activity politically, and like street action type beating up like queer authors trying to like translate like works into Ukrainian to try to create like a Ukrainian queer literature. So my God, like when it comes to the like far right ultra nationalists, they are going to be a problem when it comes to moving forward in Ukrainian like civil rights when it comes to queer people and stuff like that. And that could not be understated, that that's going to be a problem when it comes to hate crimes and stuff like that, while also stating that right sector has very little power politically, and Azov's like political party that was founded by a Nazi is again politically irrelevant. Like I think something I would point to very obviously is the fact that non-discrimination protections for LGBT people, including trans people, have been implemented in Ukraine as of 2015, like way before this recent wave of fighting. And the current very popular leader of Ukraine has even floated the idea of civic partnerships. So I mean, I think it's headed in the right direction. The polling seems to indicate that as well. So I think Ukraine is, as long as they continue to globalize global homo, is headed on the right path when it comes to LGBTQ plus people.
Matter of immediate harm. It's really difficult to know in the long term how harmful the presence of like valorized ultranationalist far-right militias will be in a country. Historically, that doesn't tend to go down very well when it comes to the acceptance of the ideologies that come with it. I can say right now that
is true, but also again, milk toastification, whatever. We already talked about this all the time. But there's also a lot of times like there's separations between these groups and the national government, and Azov has been very integrated with Ukrainian command and control. Like, I don't think there's like a risk of like Azov going rogue and like disobeying the Ukrainian government and like doing something along those lines.
We're seeing a resurgence of fascism all across the West in ideologies that we thought were dead and buried. For me, it's like, it's like you read like a local or like a news story about somebody who slipped on some ice on the stairs and died, and you're like, oh, that fucking sucks. And then you read down, they're like, oh yeah, so and so was a renowned local neo-Nazi seen at this event with an armband, Sieg Heiling, and you're like, oh, okay, well, I don't really care anymore. It's not, I'm not advocating for like their arrest and execution. I do believe in freedom of speech. It's just like,
there it is. Okay, I don't need to talk to Vaush anymore. Well, I still want to talk about the hypothetical penal right-winger battalion. I still want to talk to him about that. It would be an interesting conversation.
Like as long as it's a matter of like where my sympathies are at. It's like person dies, comma, that person wanted you dead anyway, and it's like, well, okay, fuck them then, I guess.
I agree with that. It's not my problem with what you said, honestly. If I like saw a pic of some Azov guy who died, like who were killed, I don't know, like for example with a bullet or something, and I like for sure I knew that he was like a Nazi who like bashed Jews on the streets, and gays, and maybe be on one of those how do you call them, rainbow.
I see somebody in chat saying like Chappie, like, ACAB is too flippant. You should clarify. Actually, 1/3 of cops are bastards. I don't like little fucking slogans like ACAB or what's the other one? Like abolish the police or stuff like that. If by explaining what you really mean is like a 20-page paragraph that no one's going to read, and they're just going to hear the hyperbolic statement you led with, and then you've already lost the person, which is kind of what happened here when it came to, Azov Vaush's statement.
Maybe be on one of those, how do you call them, rainbow things I went to in Kharkiv. It's like pride, like pride stuff. And we were, hit by people, and, it wasn't good. And most of the,
you don't like those because you're a lib? Yes. True. And
so, maybe those. If I see that picture of that person dead, and I am for sure aware of what he was like as a person, be that heartbroken, like just like you, I'll be like, well.
It's like, I like, you could have done a better job living.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. This is what I think I'm like bad at expressing what I mean. It's not that I disagree with what you said. I wouldn't be, of course, like that upset as I would for like a person who is not a fucking Nazi, for example, right? And but this is not the thing. Is that you don't know if they are. In this case, I know they are this person, like a hypothetical person that like that was killed, and I know he like bashed my head when I was on Pride in Kharkiv, for example. This person, yeah, not a big fan, but I will implore people to maybe read up less biased, less Russian information about Azov, which you can find some nasty stuff about them for sure, especially Beletsky. Fuck that clown.
Well,
but you know,
we can't really know, because the thing is, like, there's an association,
that's my
right?
point.
Like the logo
association is not enough for me.
Well,
But
it's not just association. It's like founded by a Nazi, and you keep seeing Nazi imagery crop up in the people who are part of the battalion. There's no way to do a poll, and also Nazis lie all the time when polled on stuff like this. They have to.
Yeah.
So I can't know and you can't know. I guess like I'm trying to think of how I could best, if I was being like perfectly careful with my language, then I would have said, if you're a Nazi in the Azov battalion, like I don't care if you die or whatever.
There we go. Took, I don't know, 2 hours or something, like an hour and a half, hour 40 minutes to get there, but there we are. What a ride. We got there. Woohoo. Fireworks. Pew.
You know, but for me, it really depends on, like, I guess the critical Nazi percentage, where it's like, I don't know, like to go by the highest example, how many of the Wehrmacht were Nazis at the beginning of the war? Like what, maybe, I don't know, 90, 80? And then how many are the Azov are? 20? 30? I don't actually know.
People mostly say 30. Which
how much is
like
the American military? I don't even know.
Who the fuck knows? I don't know. That's the way I don't like playing numbers game, because I agree with you 100% that you cannot like really tell. How the fuck will you tell? And yeah, but I guess just my concern is flipping the disregard for people's life who are not Nazis in that battalion, first and foremost, and quite a lot of them are not, like my friend who was a Jew, a Jewish man, definitely not a Nazi. And
I've talked to Jewish Nazis. I'm kidding. I'm not saying your friend.
They exist.
Look, it's the internet. Lots of people out here. Look, in all seriousness, I want to be clear. You know, the callous disregard that I have for people's well-being here is really reserved for the people who want to do the Holocaust 2.0. If you're in the Azov battalion and you're not a Nazi, and I imagine that's the case for the majority of the people there, because it would be pretty difficult to maintain ideological purity in a militia that has been incorporated into the actual military. I don't know how they would discern their recruitment. Like, you know, oh, you're a Nazi, well, you're joining up with us. That'd be pretty tough to do. If you're not, you know, and you're a member of that group, difficult association optically, but fuck it. If you're not a Nazi, then God be with you. It's not a group denunciation applied to the individual. It's a group denunciation of the group. Of course, if you're a Nazi in the Azov battalion, then, you know, stop wanting to do a Holocaust, please.
I guess the biggest thing is like I said, the disregard, and also it's not the policing of even of your language. It's just, I understand you're an edgy boy and you like edgy jokes. It's not that big of a deal to me. It's just that the concept itself, I guess, that you, maybe it's because you like think there's like a very potential strong threat with them, which I don't see, and I don't think is you know, the problem. And yeah, maybe that's the reason. Maybe you think that if they gain like prominence and power, and it will be in the future potentially damaging to maybe LGBT people. Maybe
I worry a little, because you're all set up to be, because like, here's the thing, right? I think oftentimes national politics are defined oppositionally. America was pretty okay with Hitler before World War II.
Can we just say, like, unironically, if someone was to say, Dylan, who are you scared of when it comes to the military and after the war and them doing like hate crimes and right sector, which gets zero attention in comparison, right? When it comes to like the media sprawl and everything. Maybe it's because they're I don't know, they're not just maybe, I don't know, the hand of fate didn't pick them. They're the one that actually scares me the most. I don't think they're gonna start a political movement, but I know that a lot of that I would say there's like I would say that the people who are fighting in right sector, they're much more I think leaning like almost inherently towards the more right-wing, far-right type of anti-queer, anti-gay, because of the activities that group, as an extension of its political party, which it still is tied to this day, engaged in. So I right sector scares me more. And honestly, you want to know, the one Nazi I actually met in Ukraine, just avowed Nazi, right sector, not Azov. Didn't meet any Azov Nazis in Ukraine. Only met a right sector Nazi. So if we're gonna be he and Hein, the right sector's guys scare me much more. I just, maybe if a right sector guy out there would want to give me an interview to try to prove me wrong, I would be very interested in that, of course, because I love my interviews. But that's from my experience at the very least.
Began, right? Like, it was opposition to Nazism that stigmatized eugenics research in America. Having the Nazis as an enemy made America more left-leaning. And right now, having Russia as an enemy is making you guys more left-leaning as a country. The far-right elements of Ukraine were predominantly like Russia-sympathetic Easterners. Kiev has always been more progressive than the Donbass. And over the past decade or so.
Are you worried about nationalism persisting after the war in Ukraine? What do you mean? Like, of course, nationalism is going to persist after the war in Ukraine. Like, what do you mean nationalism? Like Ho Chi Minh was a nationalist. Like, I assume what you mean is like the Stefan Bandera type, specifically like type of nationalism. And yeah, it's going to persist after the war. I don't think like right sector is going to elect fucking president. I don't think that that's going to happen. But like, yeah, it's going to exist after the war, just as it exists in basically every major country, in Russia, in the United States, and every country. Like if you would have asked me, like, is nationalism going to persist in anything? Yes. Like in France, yes. Like Marie Le Pen, look how close she was to winning. Yeah, I think it's going to persist in Ukraine, especially right after an invasion. Like, right after wars and around wars is when nationalism gets most fervent, which isn't that hard to understand why.
So Ukraine as a whole has moved left because you see what far-right politics looks like.
The parliament wished him a happy birthday the other day, so that's already here. Yeah, they did. The thing is, when it comes to Stefan Bandera, right? And this is how I've been told by I made sure to ask minority Ukrainian, like Lebanese Ukrainians I know, and other Ukrainians, this question specifically, because I wanted to get the take from the people who would be most affected by hardcore ultra nationalists. Like, this is the view that Ukraine must be this homogenous, that some earlier really bad kind of Ukrainian nationalist authors wrote about. I'm forgetting the name of the guy in my mind. I think when it comes to Stefan Bandera, he's just basically, it was described to me as almost like a nationalist Santa Claus, right? That they just kind of put him on everything. Like, he's the weird George Washington figure, right? And when we view another country and we look at a historical figure like that has garnered a type of mythos around them, which Stefan Bandera has 100% garnered in Ukraine, from the outside looking in, and I think this is useful, of course, because an outside view can be extremely useful. It's like, oh my God, why the statues for this guy who collaborated with the Nazis and the UPA dudes who worked with the SS, and what about what the UPA did to Polish communities in Galicia, like the Galician massacre? Oh my goodness. And I think that's all valid. But let's not pretend that we don't have statues all across the United States for people who fought for the literal cause of keeping black people in chains, right? Or we can even become more milquetoast to that, like George Washington. He owned people. Washington Monument outside of DC, I can get in a metro, go to it right now, named right after him. I think a lot of nations, and I'm not saying this to downplay Stefan Bandera's crimes. I'm just saying, like, all nations have a national mythos where they take historical figures who did horrific things, some good, some bad. When it comes to Stefan Bandera and the Galicia massacres, I think it's pretty obvious to say which side I kind of fall upon Stefan Bandera, considering my political leanings. But this mythos is created, and all of the ugly parts are kind of like washed away or kind of like sanded down. There's a reason why he is considered a controversial figure in Ukrainian politics, is because nobody wants to be like, oh, remember that founding father who like raped black slaves? Yeah, I want to remember him for that. Nobody wants to remember the national mythos in that way, right? Nobody does. Nobody does whatsoever. And so I'm not saying all this to, of course, like, excuse anybody trying to treat Bandera like a nationalist Santa Claus. Just saying, like, as an American or as a Russian or as a Brit, oh my God, Winston Churchill and the Indians. You want to get into a discussion about horrific crimes that people who've become nationalist symbols of a nation state doing? Right? I wonder if that actually killed more people than Stefan Bandera did for the entirety of his time involved with the UPA. I would wager, just due to population density, yes. Anyway, I just think sometimes we do it with a little less reflection. So we can, of course, criticize Stefan Bandera and his creation into a nationalist Santa Claus, but I hope people do it with a level of reflection, right? With a less of mightier than thou, we're Americans and we would never do that type of stuff, you know?
It looks like Russia. You don't want that. And that's great. Yeah. And you guys might end up being the most left-leaning country.
This is whataboutism. Left hands too. This is not whataboutism. This is me saying, hey, this is valid, but here's something to reflect upon, right? I don't like the mightier than thou attitude about it sometimes, right? For example, and the reason I bring it up is because if somebody tried to use the existence of Confederate statues in the United States to justify an invasion and the rape and murder of how many people, oh my God, I think it would be valid to say that's fucking stupid. And what about the statues to horrific monsters from Russia's history that are still up? That's the reason I'm bringing this up, right? Because I feel like by saying Stefan Bandera did these horrific things, collaborated, yada, yada, I want to make sure nobody interprets that as a justification for invasion, or that, you know, Ukrainians are a unique nation in their encapsulation of this national mythos around these historical characters. If it comes off as a whataboutism, I'm sorry, that's not the way I intended it. But I just want to make sure people are being reflective when this critique is made, so people have a little bit of insight, you know, reflect on their own nations.
Country in Europe by the time this is all done, depending on what happens in the West. And I just worry about this, like, ultra valorized, like, hey, we defended you guys against Russia, so everything we do and say is in line.
Bringing up George Washington into the conversation about left hand stew. Look, okay, buddy, you're wrong. You're my buddy, okay, Mr. Canadian journalist. But you're wrong. Debate 1, Dylan Burns. Respond right now if you're correct. I didn't hear anything. Obviously, I've won. Debate 1, Debate Pro Toxicity, WWWLLL.
Line with the Ukrainian national interest kind of nationalism that was.
I think you. I worry. Us I understand that, but I think you consider us a little bit more retarded than we are. Which
no. Listen,
understandable.
We're retarded. That's why. I wouldn't have thought this 5 years ago. The problem is we're retarded, and I know for a fact that you guys are the same species as us. That's my fucking issue. True. We're on the way down. We're sinking right now. I'm very worried. That's it. I don't think it'll happen. I don't think it's like a 51% chance or whatever. I just worry. I just worry a little, you know.
Which is, by the way, kind of funny when people talk about like Azov and shit all the time, which kind of bad that we ended up talking about it. It's not that big of an issue, to be honest.
It's really not. And I am really sorry about your friend, and I don't mind you talking about this with me at all, by the way. I don't want you to think as though this is some like...
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, yeah, okay.
Yeah. It's fine. Like I said, I would like to... I do appreciate everything you like did, you know, in terms of Ukraine, and I definitely don't think you're like a, you know, a bad person because you said that. I just think what you said was wrong, but that's fine.
I think Vaush is a bad person because he didn't watch Cowboy Bebop.
And I think I can think that and still, appreciate and respect people who I disagree with and who I think did something bad. It's something people on the internet, especially in the West, should learn, I think, this skill to be, cordial and to respect people who you deeply disagree with. To me, it's a bit different, of course, because
he hasn't. I know, right? Like, he's the anime geek or whatever. Like, that's his thing, right? I'm watching Yu Yu Hakusho recently. I'm trying to like dabble a little bit more in the animes or whatever. But like, he should have like seen it by now. I feel like he must have. He should have. It's weird.
These guys, despite the fact that they might not want me at their table, considering my like beliefs and my opinions, but they in 2014 defended me from dying, and they continue to do it, which is something that earns them respect in my eyes, for sure.
Well,
and,
hopefully,
if they
have I seen Hajime no Ippo? Yes, I have.
Hopefully, years and years of conflict with the far right, like Russian government, will push them away from the worst elements of their ideology.
Yes,
for those that still believe,
and it already did. Yeah, and a lot of them already did. I do believe people can change, by the way.
No, I do as well.
Yes, that's why I don't advocate for shooting missiles in Belgrade somewhere in Russia. I do believe even like brainwashed people as Russians are, and despite the grief they brought, unimaginable grief to this country, I still believe they potentially can, get away from this fascist vibe they're on right now. So so I do believe it, and if I believe that of them, I believe that of many other people as well. And I would, if you don't mind, please show this thing. I'm so pissed off that people was always saying that this is like Azov emblema, basically, like how to say it in English, like their symbol, basically.
Oh yeah.
And this is not a fucking Volksangel.
Oh no. Is it gonna? Okay, so I think. Okay, so. So, okay, when you listen to the founder, the Nazi founder of Azov, describe I hate to get into specifics, the this is, fuck. Okay, so I'm gonna make her argument the best way I can, and I'm gonna say why I disagree with it. Azov symbol. Okay. So the founder of Azov, and many will to this day, in fact, this will be what they will tell you. This is like the symbol you usually see for Azov. This symbol in the middle, which isn't the symbol you see like used on uniforms really anymore. This is the one you see now. It's like twisted to the side kind of, which is like moving more and more away from the original, but still. Like this
Burns
right
is
here,
immoral,
what the
corrupt,
founder of Azov
bankrupt
says,
man.
and this is the boilerplate response you'll get from like anybody who's with Azov or stuff like this, is this NI, right? In this here, the NI stands for national identity or national independence, or like something NI, right? It was something along those lines. The fact that it was founded by a neo-Nazi makes it too coincidental for me to believe that. I'll just leave it at that. Afterwards, maybe a mythos develops around it and it becomes that because everybody kind of wants to cope a bit about where the symbol came from. That's fine. In fact, I prefer
Peanut
that
Butter
to
Blondie
then,
got a tier 3 subscription. Asterisk Peanut Butter Blondie asterisk got a tier 3 asterisk subscription.
We don't get a lot of tier 3ers. Getting tier 3 and sub while we're talking about the Nazi symbols. Very interesting. Okay, just the type of crowd we're attracting here at DylanBurnsLIVE. I'm kidding, of course, Peanut Butter. Thank you, Peanut Butter Blondie, for the not a gifted, but a tier 3 sub. We don't have many. Definitely doing it on site chat, DylanBurns.tv, DYLANBURNS.tv. It's rare. Very rare. It's like getting a silver Pokemon card. I appreciate it. You have joined my board of elites, my globalist board. I appreciate it. Basically, I disagree with this idea. I feel like it's a cop-out. If Anna, of course, can DM me at any point, we could talk about this, and she can correct me.
Immoral, morally
no,
corrupt,
I don't buy it.
bankrupt man.
I just don't buy it.
I'm so tired of it. This is an end.
Like it's just very convenient that the founder was a neo-Nazi, and then the symbol developed just so happened to be just very convenient. You know, very convenient. That's all. Just very, very convenient. Round Sphere 1985. I appreciate the Prime. Thank you.
By an eye, national idea. It's another picture you have is how actually Wolfsangel looks, which is a Nazi, a wolf's hook Nazi.
Isn't this
shit.
Is this not a black sun?
Looks like a black sun
No,
to me.
it's not, and it pisses me off that.
No, that's a black sun, and anyone saying that's not a black sun is coping and or seething. I mean, you could say that now they're trying to distance themselves more away from the original whatever, the yada yada, but I mean, it is what it is. It's a shape. It'd be like telling me like this triangle isn't a triangle, it's a square. It's like, come on.
That you said it, but you know.
Does it? It sure.
It's just very convenient. Like out of all the group, like if this does stand for like NI and not, you know, what I feel like it actually is. It's just very convenient that it so happened to be the group that is the Azov battalion founded by a neo-Nazi. You know, that is just very convenient. I feel like it's like we're coping a bit. You know, we're coping a bit here, right? I mean, like, I'm not gonna say that they turned it on its side to kind of like obfuscate and stuff like that, but like I would understand why. Now it looks more like a Z with a line through it. I can't even tell, you know, like maybe there's like, you know, marketing. Like I don't know why they made the change, but for me it feels like a very clear like, oh boy, now that they're Nazi founders going, let's get rid of the yellow. But we don't want to change it too much because if we change it, then maybe that looks like an admission. So maybe you turn it to the. I'm not saying. Again, I don't know the specifics behind like where the symbol, like how the design meetings went, but you know, I would understand the logic behind that.
Sure looks like one. I mean,
it looks like it. Bad idea to use that. For sure.
Sure looks like
a. Reigns, who is part of Azov, did a Twitter thread on the history of the NI symbol. You sent me the You sent me like their Twitter. You didn't send me the thread. You have to send me the thread, not just their Twitter. Send me the thread and I'll look at it. If I'm wrong, I'd be pleasantly surprised, right? But it just like it's like, by the way, somebody brings this up, and this is a good point. When it comes to the Black Sun, there is really no debate. You can talk about the NI, I guess, if you want to, like, obfuscate a bit. I mean, it feels like obfuscation. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I will accept that possibly there's a 10% chance in my mind I might be wrong on that, okay? Probably not. This was invented by Heinrich Himmler. It's like that's a secret, like weird occult dungeon where they had sex parties. Like, there's the belt that they, like, this was quite literally made by Himmler. Like, it first appeared in Nazi Germany as a design element in the Kasten-Wisselberg remodel and expanded by the head of the SS, Heinrich Himmler. Like, let's like put the NI thing aside. Why is this there, right? Why is this on it? Now, I will say that I can imagine in my head a random person in Ukraine, due to the whole Slavic roots and like Vikings, because they believe that stuff is, they're very proud of it. They just maybe see that symbol, put it on their uniform because they're like, oh, it's ruining. And maybe you could imagine a situation where that's the case, right? Because you could like make like some wiggle room because the individual doesn't know and da. But they made this symbol. Like this is what they put on their thing. They had to research to make this. They had to grab shapes to do it. There's only one place it could have gotten that shape, and that is Heinrich fucking Himmler.
A German Nordic rune in front of a black sun, you know, like the hypothetically.
Yeah, but it's not.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's legally distinct, copyright distinct.
It's black.
Yeah.
It looks like a black sun. I mean, look, I was about to say Azov can prove me wrong. Anna can DM me any point if I was wrong about this, but like, I'll even ask her in private if I remember to, but like, ooh, wasn't the Black Sun stolen from the Vikings? I don't think that's the case. And even if it was, like, why would you try to take it back? Like, I mean, like, that doesn't prove it was a Nazi if you tried to take it back, but like, why even, right? I don't think that's the case. Black Sun, I don't think it's the case that it was stolen. Like, I don't know the history of Black Sun outside of like Heinrich Himmler. That's where I thought it started. Like, is there anything else? No, it's just Heinrich Himmler, Heinrich Himmler, Heinrich Himmler. Like, and it's used by some neo-pagan and Satanist cults as an esoteric symbol, right? Okay, so unless Satanism has become big in Azov recently, that'd be a crazy twist of fate. Turns out they were actually Satanists all along. Yeah, no. No.
I mean, you can assume that they like were vibing with this shit and made it look like that, but it's an N crossed by an I. But again, you can say it's, the C is Azov Sea, as you probably like.
Yeah, the C is Azov Sea, which, okay. That, you know what? Keep the C, get rid of everything else.
Maybe no, it's actually
C's
water
cool.
and the sun is.
You got a whole C, Azov, yeah.
For that.
I don't know, add a fish, make it a fish. Make it a cute little Ukrainian fish. Give it a little, like, Cossack hairstyle, give it a little sword. Perfect new Azov logo.
But it does look kind of like that. I give you that.
Little
Bad PR for sure.
Slight resemblance,
Yeah.
I'd say, to the Nordic
But
Green, the Black Sun.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah,
the
but
Black
you can
Sun.
see how in the picture, if you can see it, are these movements neo-Nazi? This picture I showed you, they show it that how actual Wolfsangel looks like. So how the wolf's hook looks like, and it actually looks way more like a Russian Z symbol. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah,
So, yeah.
It's got a few associations, got a few connotations.
Yeah, true. Yeah, strange.
well,
It does out. Yeah, actually, the new Azov symbol does kind of funnily, kind of look like a Z, which is kind of funny.
We'll see how things pan out. Again, the really though, like when you said it's not a big deal, I do genuinely believe that. I know
that,
because like the thing is here, like the Azov battalion is quite small relative to the total size of the Ukrainian military, and the thing is that right now
less than 1%.
The symbol of American fascism is literally like Christian nationalism.
Yo, where's actually? I can design the new Azov logo. 1 second. Where is it? I've seen it before. There's a little cartoon. Oh no, where is it? No, I can't find it. Oh, there's like a meme about like a trans Azov like little cartoon. Oh no, I can't find it. Nope, it's not here. Well, if anybody knows what I'm talking about and can link it before the segment ends, I'd appreciate it.
Symbols of which have been ubiquitized at almost every level of American society, which means that it's essentially just a larger dog whistle. I don't know. We all have to be careful about this stuff. This Nazi shit can really sneak up on you.
I will say that I will give you like something for sure is that people the Russians made this such a strong tool against Ukraine, calling us Nazis, So this is like denazification is the goal. They allegedly, invaded, or they're trying to save us or some shit, liberators. They're always the heroes, these fascists in their story. So basically what happened is it's such a allergic reaction to many Ukrainians to that, I must say. So if you like talk shit about like Azov, talk shit about honestly anything, some people will like just have this knee-jerk reaction to it because they associate this rhetoric with Russian propaganda, which I think is understandable but can be bad. You need to engage with that, I think. So I saw people trying to say that Beletsky is not a Nazi, actually, which is not true. He is, which I guess is what you're worrying about. To try to, I think what you mean is like that their like heroic acts in defending our country will allow them to, pass some of that Nazi shit, like.
Yeah, well, Nazi
slip it in.
Fascism is basically always initially framed as like a necessary defense of the nation, given form.
It is in this case, right?
Well,
unlike Russia.
I mean, I think you can defend against Russia without doing the Azov Nazi shit. But like,
Definitely, yes.
there's nothing about the ideology of fascism that makes a country more able to defend itself. I just think that's the pretext given for like the rise of that ideology, because people get scared and they run to far-right ultranationalists. I think right now Ukraine is actually unique in being one of the rare examples where in a time of actual existential threat, the country rallied around internationalism and liberal democracy,
Yes,
rather than like
definitely.
an ultra strongman. And that actually is unique, because usually it goes the other way.
God, I can't believe. No, I was not talking about Azov Chan earlier, and the fact that I know what Azov Chan is shows my brain has been rotted by Ukrainian Twitter.
Yeah, you wouldn't find a soldier. I talked to many of them, as you probably know, as a volunteer, you know. So most of them, pretty much none of them, will say they're fighting for Zelensky or some shit. It sounds like ridiculous to Ukrainians. You would never hear a person saying, "Yeah, I'm fighting for like my strong leader Zelensky." You know, it just doesn't happen, which is, I think, good in a way, because people mostly will say, I fight to defend my home, I fight to defend my country.
Okay, so if you look at this right here, right? Look at this thread doing the whole shebang about the symbol, right? The idea of here it is, idea of nation, right? This thread about this. I'll look at this off stream. Maybe I'll be convinced. I'll come back later. To be clear, oh, does this address it actually? No, it doesn't. Okay, but the thing is, notice something about all of this, right? Notice something about all of this. The Black Sun thing isn't even talked about here. Like, why not? And I think the reason why is because, like, even though they have it down here, like, there's no way to defend the Black Sun. So whether you like it or not, like, this has white supremacist like markings on it. Even if you were to buy the idea of nation thing, which I haven't been sold on, the Black Sun is a neo-Nazi symbol. It was started by Heinrich Himmler in his sex occult castle, which, by the way, look into Heinrich Himmler's sex occult castle. Just the sentence alone should already interest you. Let's finish this conversation.
The people I love, they would not say that they're fighting for some like big political like nobody. Also, you know, many people who are fighting are not like ethnic Ukrainian. Nobody cares. So you know, there's that. And overall, the rhetoric such as far right is very rare here right now.
Stop. Thank you so much.
We'll see how it goes, I guess.
Appreciate it.
I hope that pattern continues.
Yeah, I just.
By the way, I really can I be honest? When I hear the word far right, my brain has been rotted by the internet, because when the average person hears far right, it's going to be very different than like what the internet poster like says far right, right? Like, for example, when we say far right here and then we say Nazi here, these are two different things, and the way we use these words are different, right? Like, I would personally call, if somebody was to ask me, I would say Marjorie Taylor Greene far right. I would not call her a Nazi. Yeah? And I do think that is an important distinction. Same thing with like Matt Gaetz. I would actually probably call him far right, probably. Yeah, I would call him far right. But I would not call him a Nazi. I am very careful about the word Nazi because I just try to generally be careful with words. So when we say the word far right, also, I wonder what like
immoral,
Vaush's like definition of what is this bar for like far right? Because if I'm being completely honest, when she says, oh, the far right stuff, it's not that popular. The spectrum, the political spectrum when it comes to social values, stuff like that in Ukraine is very different than in the United States. Not like wildly apart, like Saudi Arabia versus United States different, but like when it comes to polling, when it comes to LGBTQ plus people, like Ukraine is just not where the United States is. A majority of people in Ukraine do not believe gay people should get married. The majority of people in Ukraine, if you poll them on trans people, you're not going to get the best responses. It's improving, but far right in whose political context? In Ukraine's political context or in the United States political context? That was something that was never addressed in the conversation, which I would probably just ask. If we ever talk to Vaush about this, I would want to ask him about. Chisel, thank you so much for the tier 1 and being so for 3 months. Appreciate it. Currently on a 2-month streak. Thank you. Happy New Year, peeps. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Understand like the concern, but understand mine as well, I guess. Yeah, that's probably it. Anyway, we ended up talking about Azov.
Yeah,
Cringe.
well, we talked
less
about
than
Naruto as
1%.
well.
Yes, but this is the only thing I disagree with you on, to be fair. So this is why I decided to, talk about it. And I wouldn't even talk about it, but just
at Dylan Burns, what would it take to make someone a fascist / Nazi? Well, fascist and Nazi is maybe I'm just never mind. Doesn't matter. If not, MTG with the Jewish space laser sit. Playing into anti-Semitic stereotypes is not the same
is an immoral,
as being a neo-Nazi.
Corrupt,
both are bad.
Man.
There's a difference there, right? Like if I was to hear let's say I had a family member like a racist uncle or something, right? I don't have a racist uncle.
Burns
not
is
living
an
one.
immoral,
But let's say I did.
Corrupt,
and he was
man.
like, there are a lot of Jews in banking, or he said something along those lines. That person isn't necessarily a Nazi for saying something like that. They're anti-Semitic.
Burns is an
he said something anti-Semitic.
Corrupt,
but maybe it's because I'm
man.
just too strict with the word Nazi. Maybe Nazi now just means like if you show any signs of anti-Semitism, or if you've let any anti-Semitic like stereotypes or conspiracies
Burns is an
bleed into your head,
morally corrupt,
which I would say like whatever. I don't want to get too into it, but I try to be generally careful before I label somebody a Nazi, and the reason why is the Nazis killed
Burns
how many millions of people.
Morally
I'm going to be careful before I put that label on anyone, right? Definitely if I think there's a more apt way to describe them, because the way we treat Marjorie Taylor Greene and the way we treat,
Burns
say, I don't know, like
morally corrupt,
literally a, skinhead, Zig Heil Nazi, that is different. You do have to treat them differently because they have different beliefs and they do
Burns is an immoral,
they have different
morally
stated
corrupt,
values and you have to interact with them differently. Zenith Dante, thank you so much for 10 gifted tier 1 subs. I appreciate it. Wow, that's a lot actually. Thank you. My goodness.
Burns
as many Ukrainians wanted me to. And I don't know if I did a good job or not, but overall, this is, again, trying to point out that this is pretty much the only thing I didn't like that you said, like in the entirety of your coverage of Ukraine.
Burns
which,
is an immoral,
is not bad.
Corrupt,
not anywhere as bad as some other people who I will not name. Hassan. But basically that.
Well, then I'll strive to make it worse so that we have more to talk about in the future.
Immoral, morally corrupt.
Nah, don't do that.
Thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it as well.
Dad Dylan Burns, you think if you give MTG absolute Führer powers tomorrow, she wouldn't open up the showers all over the country? Absolute Führer powers. No, I don't. I don't think she would. No. Like if you mean if she would start a second Holocaust, I don't think she would start a second Holocaust. I think we would see some fucking horrific things maybe when it comes to trans people. But I don't think a second Holocaust would start for the Jews. Because I don't think that her type of anti-Semitism is kill all the Jews. I think her level of anti-Semitism isn't that high. I just don't.
Well, I really do think.
I mean, like, you could be like, oh, I think she's hiding it. As like, I mean, it's impossible to really like dictate.
You did fantastic, and actually joined me the faith and the leftists in the West.
At Dylan Burns, I love you, but if you're really naive, if you didn't think MTG would kill millions, what genocidal intent have you seen from Marjorie Taylor Greene to indicate that you know that if she became Führer, she would kill all the Jews? Like, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene would hurt a lot of people. A lot of people, especially a lot of minority groups. But I don't think she would kill all the Jews. No.
Because they fucked up, dude.
Yeah, I talk about this all the time. It's such an unbelievable fumbling of the ball.
Yeah.
It's the biggest layup in the universe. The entire Western world is lined up to defend a country from a fascist invasion, and the left starts sweating and tweedling their fingers. It's genuinely
repulsive.
So
confusing. It's it's like the most on the nose imperialist invasion.
By the way, don't read my interpretation of if you would have put a gun to my head and asked if she would or wouldn't, I would say no as a like thumbs up to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Just be clear, not to take it that way. Stoic Squirrel, thank you so much for the tier 1 beats up for 22 months. Look at all those dancing pigs. I appreciate it.
like old school style, you know, like that's uncovered imperialist invasion, like just without any like attempts to cover what they're doing. They literally say they want to re-educate us and to destroy Ukrainian identity. They like destroy our flags, they destroy our language. They say that our language is degenerate. They called Ukrainian identity basically a disease at this point.
No, they've said that, and the Western far right is saying that the Russia's invasion of Ukraine might be legitimate as a way of protecting them from like global liberalism, which is literally a Nazi conspiracy theory. The idea that like expansion is necessary. Yeah, no, literally, completely, JQing it.
Actually, I should have got the guy who was a tanky, who told me that I was part of some transatlantic elites, so
Yankee tanky.
some shit.
Yankee
And
tanky.
he was like, I was like, is he a Nazi? But he was like, no, I'm a glorious communist. And I was like, oh, are you sure about that too? Sounds suspicious.
For those of you who
to
don't
me.
know, Yankee Tanky, you can look up my debate on my second channel. It's very, very funny. Yankee Tanky is the guy who I debated, I think, in an alleyway, as in he was in an alleyway off of his phone, and while ranting about how Hitler was Jewish, and any other number of absurd things, like how we should invade Canada, his neighbor came out at 9 p.m. to tell him to stop yelling in the alleyway and go inside, which he had to end the debate for because of that. That is the person she is referring to. You can go see the debate yourself. It's pretty something.
Yeah, and he
It's on DylanBurnsLIVE, DylanBurns Live.
was like, she has Azov tattoos. Like it's a meme basically. At this
Oh,
point.
interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, they have a lot going on.
And I was like, oh, no, only like Spyro the Dragon, like Final Fantasy and flowers and shit. Sorry. And he was like, oh yeah, you have Azov tattoos, but they will not accept you because you have a long nose. So he basically assumed I was a Jew, but was condemning my country for being anti-Semitic Nazis, while doing the stereotypes of Jews having long noses.
You would understand this
Good
if you
job.
had read Marx. All this fits within the greater theory. It all makes sense once you know.
Yeah, he said actually about theory. Shame that I did in fact read it. Nothing about long noses there. So, you know, it's very, very confusing sometimes for sure. But I do appreciate, like I said, the work you did, because boy, was it bad. Only like two leftists I like is you and Lonerbox, who is awesome. I talked to him 2 times, I think.
I like
Well,
Loner.
Really enjoyed talking with him.
We'll see how things go with regards to the war.
Okay, I think that's enough. I think that's enough of that. I think we got the point in. Hey, Vaush reeled it in the end. Took a while to get there. You know, I feel like there was a lot of circling around before eventually they parked in the right spot. You could have cut this conversation at least in half, but they got there. Good job for getting there. Yeah. Honestly, I'm happy that we have Ukrainians being engaged in these conversations just for the sake of making sure that the locals are engaging in these conversations. I hope through going back to Ukraine and interviewing more people, maybe more people could interact with the space. That'd be really cool. That'd be awesome. Anyway, pretty good convo. But Vaush,